Chapter 837. In Lucifer's fear, the four of them were stripped to their pants by famous sword Dao Xue. By then, Lucifer and the others' crowd control effects had already been removed. However, removing the crowd control effects was useless now. Even if Lucifer's class had the highest judgment, they were still nothing in Xuanzhen's hands when they were naked. "What you're doing isn't right," Lucifer said with a sobbing tone as he criticized famous sword Dao Xue. When the audience heard this, they were all stunned. Being criticized by such a bastard, the people from Xuanzhen felt wronged. "Oh," famous sword Dao Xue replied, and began to dig through Lucifer and the others' backpacks. "You'll get what you deserve." Lucifer struggled and roared when he saw that famous sword Dao Xue was unmoved. There's something wrong with this guy's head. Even someone as honest as Wang Yu couldn't help but look at Lucifer in disdain. In the game world, there was no retribution for killing people, much less stealing. Besides, if there really was retribution, it would be the bastard from Satan's battle team who got it first. However, looking at the current situation, Satan's battle team was really getting what they deserved. Of course, the people from Xuanzhen didn't believe this. If they were really afraid of retribution, just what Xuanzhen had done in the past was enough for them to have bad luck for a few lifetimes. As the saying goes, when there are too many lice, it doesn't itch anymore. Who would care about retribution? We saw the way the people from Xuanzhen looked at them as if they were idiots. Lucifer really panicked. He kicked the ground and began to roll around on the ground. As he rolled, he shouted, "Give me back my equipment, you bunch of bandits! Give me back my equipment!" Looking at Lucifer rolling around on the ground, the hundreds of thousands of players in the arena all broke out in a cold sweat. Lucifer was a famous villain in the 7th server. Now that he was being bullied to the point where he was rolling around on the ground, it was an eye-opener for everyone. They felt that this trip was worth it. To be able to see such a famous person in such an ugly state, the entrance fee of a few gold coins was definitely worth it. So pitiful. When he saw Lucifer in this state, Wang Yu frowned and felt pity for him. "Why don't we stop taking out the items from our bags?" Famous sword Dao Xue asked Wang Yu, feeling puzzled. Wang Yu shook her head and took out a piece of tattered cloth from her bag. She casually squeezed it a few times and forcefully stuffed it into Lucifer's mouth. In the end, she even hammered it a few times. Poor Lucifer. Fortunately, this was a game world, and the players were full of vitality. If this was the real world, he would have suffocated to death. Although Wang Yu's method was rough, the effect was still very obvious. After Lucifer's mouth was gagged, the world immediately became quiet. After that, Wang Yu nodded and said to Mingjian Dao Xue, "All right, let's continue." F***CK. Wang Yu's outrageous and crude methods made the Xuanzhen's group of ruthless people feel their scalps tingle. Kung Fu was a killing technique. No matter how honest Wang Yu was, he was still a professional. Even a skinny camel was bigger than a horse. The methods used by a professional like Wang Yu were naturally not just a little bit more experienced than the business crooks of Xuanzhen. Seeing Lucifer in such a miserable state, Lucifer's 3 lackeys shrunk their necks and gave up on the idea of resisting. Under the suppression of Wang Yu and the others and the looting of Mingjian Dao Xue, Lucifer and the other 3 were finally robbed clean. The 4 of them were only left with a pair of underwear that the system had forced them to wear. Should we hang them on a tree, as an example? Wang Yu stretched out his neck and suggested. F***CK, old cow, what enmity do you have with them? Hearing Wang Yu say this, the other people of Xuanzhen couldn't take it anymore. Wang Yu had always been the representative of kindness in Xuanzhen. Facing people like Li Xiaobing, Wang Yu could let them go. At this time, Lucifer had been stripped naked, and Wang Yu still wanted to hang him on a tree, as an example. If it wasn't for the fact that everyone had been in contact with Wang Yu for a long time, they would have suspected that the person standing in front of them was that kid. Evildoers run wild. Wang Yu said, "Didn't my wife say it? Torture him to death." F***CK. Everyone laughed. This man was a good Huaxia husband. He listened to his wife's words. Luckily, Mu Zixian wasn't a bad person. Otherwise, who knew what Wang Yu would be like now? However, everyone thought that the reason why Wang Yu wanted to torture Lucifer to death was because Mu Zixi had said that Lucifer was very handsome. Forget it. Wu Ji waved his hand, pointed at the naked Lucifer, and said, "They are already miserable enough. Give them a quick death." Hearing Wu Ji's words, Lucifer and the other three were so touched that their eyes brimmed with tears. The hatred they had for Wu Ji just now instantly dissipated. In any case, the human world has given us so much good equipment, isn't it? Just treat it as spending money to avoid disaster, Wu Ji said again. F***CK. The word equipment from Wu Ji's mouth made Lucifer and the other three's hearts turn cold. Their resentment rose again. All right. Wang Yu was also a person who listened to advice. Seeing that Wu Ji had already said this, Wang Yu didn't have to go too far. He casually gave each of them a punch and let them be gloriously sent to heaven. In the third match, the motley crew won a complete victory. The final score was 50-0. The motley crew didn't let Satan win a single point. The spectators in the arena were moved once again. It wasn't just because of the heaven-defying result of 50-0. More importantly, it was because of the way that Xuanjin guys snatched equipment. The value of equipment in the game was definitely higher than one's life. Seeing these people who could strip people naked at any time, who would dare to casually become their enemy? In any case, none of the players present dared to do so. Even the deep-sea battle team, who were in the last match, was shocked when they saw the last match between Wang Yu and the Satan battle team. In the end, they didn't hesitate at all and decisively forfeited. It couldn't be helped. The more skilled a player was, the more powerful their equipment was. Because of their awareness and skills, their dependence on equipment was also stronger than that of ordinary players. If this group of robbers from Xuanjin stole their equipment, even if it wasn't difficult to find replacement equipment, it would take a long time to adapt. Who would want to suffer such a fate? Just like that, Xuanjin won without a fight and easily became the overall champion of the 7 zones in this qualifier. The competition was over, and the champion had been decided. The spectators left their seats one after another. Next up was the reward segment. The rewards for this qualifier were quite generous. As long as one won a match, they would be given some rewards. The further they went, the more generous the rewards would be. The reward for the overall champion was self-evident. Wang Yu and the others seemed to see a large number of gold coins waving at them. However, just as everyone was waiting to receive their rewards, the system suddenly made a global announcement. Rebirth calendar year XXXX. Zone 7 Ares City Satan battle team harassed a female player in a competition. Since this is the first offense, the third place reward in the competition will be revoked. A global warning will be issued. If there are any other violations, once it is verified, the account will be deleted. Haha. F***CK. Serves them right. Seeing the warning for Lucifer on the public screen, the players who had witnessed these scum's despicable behavior felt extremely satisfied. The people from Xuanjin couldn't help but point at Lucifer and the others and mock them. Chapter 838. Rebirth, Year XXXX. Server 7 Yu Huiqing's ragtag team harassed a male player in a competition. This is the first offense. Apart from losing the right to participate in the Pro League, all rewards for the champion will be revoked, and a world warning will be issued. If there are any other violations, their accounts will be deleted. The two announcements alternated on the public screen 3 times. Wang Yu and the others were stunned for a good 10 seconds before they started cursing. F***CK. What the F***CK? What the F***CK is going on? Why are the rewards gone? Mingdu to place one's pride hugged each other and cried bitterly. These two had worked so hard for this little bit of reward. In the end, after risking their lives for a long time, the system suddenly announced that the rewards had been canceled. This was like the police who had just opened the door to crack down on prostitution. There was no need to mention their mood. What F***king harassing a male player? Who decided that? Compared to the rewards, Wang Yu, Bao San, and the others were more concerned about their reputation. After all, they were all famous experts, especially Wang Yu, who was in the limelight more than the others. Harassing a male player was not a bad thing, much less a team. Harassing a female player would at most be seen as a pervert, but harassing a male player was a pervert. Actually, Wang Yu, Bao San, and the others were still fine, but Yang Na and Exquisite Dream were in a more awkward situation. No matter how tough these two girls were, they were still girls. How were they going to survive after their harassment of a male player was broadcasted to the world? F*CK. I can't keep my integrity. I can't keep my integrity. Exquisite Dream shook her head and sighed. Yang Na even had the thought of quitting the team to save her intelligence. Players from all corners of the world were also discussing. F*CK. This ragtag team is really something. They're so lively that they don't even let men off. Not only that, I heard that they don't even let animals off. Really? There are even F*King small animals? Of course. I have a friend who saw it with his own eyes. The rumor-mongering player said confidently. For a time, the reputation of the motley crew in the game was completely established. In fact, Chuanjin had been broadcasted to the world before, but those stories were soon buried in the long river of history. However, the motley crew was different. In the game, there were stories of people killing bosses every day, but harassing men was something that was rarely seen in 100 years. Compared to them, the latter was definitely more worth talking about. If there were no accidents, even if Rebirth shut down, the stain of the motley crew would probably be carried over to the next game. In the online gaming circle, there were many people who didn't hesitate to show off their lowly limits in order to become famous, but in the end, they could only become a one-time internet celebrity. The motley crew that didn't want to become famous had been forcibly made famous by the system. This could be considered as an unintentional willow growing into a shade. From this, it could be seen that using strength in the correct direction was the way of the king. Because of this, after the qualifiers, there was a wave of harassment of men in the online live streaming world. The nature of the harassment was extremely vile. However, those people were not as lucky as Chuanjin and Satan. Those internet celebrities who followed the trend had their accounts forcefully deleted by the system. Some of them even had their IDs banned for life. They had also become a weirdo in the history of gaming. Of course, this was a story for the future. They didn't care whether they said it or not. At this moment, everyone in Chuanjin was confused. They couldn't understand why they were warned by the system. Wang Yu asked Wuji in puzzlement. The harassment incident clearly happened before this. Why is the system warning them now? They should have been reported by someone, Wuji said after thinking for a while. Report. After hearing Wuji's explanation, everyone was instantly speechless. When Lucifer stirred up trouble, the hundreds of thousands of players present were filled with righteous indignation. It was reasonable for them to be reported. However, there was one thing that made everyone very puzzled. Logically speaking, Lucifer's actions had already crossed the bottom line of human nature. Although the system was a computer, it also had its own rules of conduct. When Lucifer was reported, he should have been warned. Why did it have to wait until now? Just when everyone was confused, Wuji looked at Lucifer and the others who were gritting their teeth and said, "If I'm not wrong, the person who reported them should be Satan Crew. F*CK, are they crazy?" Mingdu couldn't help but shout. In order to take revenge on others, they even reported themselves. This behavior of harming others without benefiting themselves was really confusing. Wuji shook his head and said, "They're not crazy. They probably just wanted to report us for stealing equipment. They didn't expect that they would be found out." After hearing Wuji's words, everyone was silent. Then they looked at Lucifer. As expected, there was a hint of sadness in the angry expressions of this group of people. Mingdu glared at Lucifer fiercely and scolded angrily. F*CK, it's because of this group of idiots that I lost my championship prize. Wang Yu laughed and said, "That's enough. Didn't we also get a bunch of top-tier equipment? Because of them, we should be content. You should know that even the championship prize is probably not as good as these equipment prizes." Wang Yu was right. The system's rewards were still in line with the rules. Currently, the average level of the players was only level 40. Even if it was the championship prize, It would be good if each person was given a piece of level 40 dark gold equipment. However, Chuanjin and the others had looted a total of 10 sets of equipment from Satan Crew. What kind of concept was this? A mere championship prize was not even worth mentioning. However, what kind of people were Chuanjin people? This group of people's famous saying was, "How can we not take advantage of others?" From this, it could be seen that this group of people were the kind of people who would suffer losses if they couldn't take advantage of others. Moreover, they could only watch as the system took away the rewards that belonged to them. Naturally, the people of Chuanjin could not say anything about the system. After all, the system was a god. It could turn you into ashes with a flick of its finger. However, this did not stop the people of Chuanjin from directing their anger towards Lucifer and the others. Just you wait. Just you wait. Mingdu turned around and pointed at Lucifer and the others, threatening them. However, to Mingdu's surprise, Lucifer actually said the same thing to Chuanjin. After saying this, Lucifer and his subordinates hurriedly left the scene. At this time, that Sunshine, the leader of Harmony Battle Team, who had just received his reward, walked over with his subordinates. That Sunshine walked up to Wang Yu and said with a smile, "Little handsome, I didn't expect you guys to be so fierce. Losing to you guys isn't embarrassing at all." This girl sure knew how to find face for herself. She had been beaten so badly, yet she still had the face to say that it wasn't embarrassing. One does not hit a smiling person. Although Wang Yu cursed in his heart, Wang Yu still had the humility of a martial artist. Furthermore, since this lady was so polite, Wang Yu naturally did not want to make fun of her. Well said, well said. You guys are also quite powerful." Wang Yu cupped his fist at that Sunshine. On the side, Withered Vine Old Tree smiled and said, "Everyone knows whether we are powerful or not, but you guys have to be careful. That Lucifer is not easy to deal with." Chapter 839. The old tree only laughed at Mingdu's words and ignored Mingdu. It then turned and said to Wang Yu, "Don't look at Lucifer like that. Do you know who his older brother is?" "I don't know." Wang Yu shook his head. Honestly speaking, the people of Chuanjin like to play by themselves. If it was a veteran expert, Wu Ji and the others might know some of them. But if it was a rising star, who would know who? Wang Yu was a typical example of a person who did not pay attention to the outside world's affairs. The famous people that Wang Yu knew were either friends or had been beaten up by Wang Yu before. Wang Yu could still remember his friends, and Wang Yu would not deliberately remember those who had been beaten up before. As for the others, in Wang Yu's eyes, they were all passers-by. They were not much stronger than higher-level NPCs. Seeing how ignorant and ill-informed Wang Yu was, the old tree was stunned for a moment. Then it said, "Marshall moves the universe." Hearing the old tree say that, Wang Yu frowned and let out a profound sigh. "How is it? Now you know, right?" The old tree thought that Wang Yu was afraid and asked with a smile. However, Wang Yu mumbled, "It's a good name. Why didn't I think of it at that time?" Marshall moves the universe. What an arrogant and pretentious name. Compared to Iron Ox, which sounded like a supporting character's name, it was many times more awesome. Seeing that the bastard's older brother had such an awesome name, Wang Yu's face was filled with envy. Ugh! The old tree broke into a cold sweat. "You don't know him?" "No." Wang Yu shook his head and asked Wu Ji and the others, "What about you guys?" Wu Ji and the others shook their heads. Only Ming Jian, Dao Xue, nodded and said, "I've heard of it before, but I'm not familiar with it." Kuting Old Tree was completely speechless. He didn't expect this group of people to be so powerful, yet they were so narrow-minded. They hadn't even heard of a famous person like Wu Dong Qiankuan. Was this how short-sighted they were? Or was he so confident that he could look down on the heroes of the world? Withered Vine Old Tree suddenly felt that he couldn't understand these people in front of him. "Is it very powerful?" Wang Yu asked symbolically. Withered Vine Old Tree said, "Not only are they strong, they are really strong. Do you know only Martial Supreme? That is Martial Shaking Heaven and Earth's guild. They are one of the strongest guilds in the 7th server, and their ranking this season is even higher than Yu Huiqing's Blood Alliance. So powerful, Wuji and the others were a little skeptical when they saw Dry Vine Old Tree boasting about Martial Move's universe so much. Blood Alliance was an old guild with deep foundations. Although their development and rebirth wasn't too optimistic, and some of their members were poached, the framework was there. How could they be surpassed by a new guild? Of course, this is War God City. How can it be compared to a suburban city like yours? However, the strongest isn't only Martial Supreme, but Martial Move's universe's personal strength. Withered Vine Old Tree said, "Personal strength? How strong?" Wang Yu always had an inexplicable fondness for expert players. Withered Vine Old Tree sized up Wang Yu and said, "Your strength isn't bad. If I'm not wrong, you've either been a soldier or trained a few moves." I casually learned a few moves in the countryside. Wang Yu said, "Then that's easy." Withered Vine Old Tree said mysteriously, "Other people might not understand how strong Martial Move's universe is, but as someone in the industry, you should be able to imagine it." "Oh, what do you mean?" Wang Yu was even more curious. Withered Vine Old Tree looked left and right, afraid that people would think he was crazy. He lowered his voice and said, "Martial Move's universe knows Kung Fu." Kung Fu. When the Chuanjin people heard this, they all turned to look at Wang Yu and Yang Na and then laughed, "Haha, Kung Fu." Wang Yu and Yang Na had mingled with the people of Chuanjin for a long time, so they had more or less brought up topics such as Wang Yu's background. Thus, the people of Chuanjin sect were naturally familiar with Kung Fu. Yang Na would often say that Wang Yu's level was the #1 expert in the Kung Fu circle. Coupled with Wang Yu's usual performance, everyone believed this without a doubt. When they heard Withered Vine Old Tree say that Martial Move's universe knew Kung Fu, they couldn't help but think of the phrase displaying one's slight skill in front of an expert. "Why? You don't believe it?" Withered Vine Old Tree was very dissatisfied with the tone of the Chuanjin people. "If you say something else, we may not believe it." As for Kung Fu, to place one's pride pointed to Wang Yu and said, "I have not seen anyone who knows more than my Uncle Niu." "Mph." Withered Vine Old Tree sneered, "Ignorant and arrogant, ignorant and narrow-minded. F***CK. How can you say that?" Seeing that the defeated general dared to laugh at him, to place one's pride was immediately unhappy. He raised his fist and wanted to kick Withered Vine Old Tree away. Wang Yu waved his hand and pressed to place one's pride back. He smiled and asked Withered Vine Old Tree, "Is that person's Kung Fu very good?" "Of course. Otherwise, do you think that no one can deal with Lucifer who is so lawless?" "It's all because of his brother." When Withered Vine Old Tree mentioned Lucifer, it had a look of contempt. "How good is he?" Wuji was also somewhat unconvinced and asked Withered Vine Old Tree. "One person can fight a team." Withered Vine Old Tree said, "How many people can a team?" Wang Yu asked Wuji, puzzled. Wuji said, "According to our country's 3/3 military system, there should be no less than 2,000 people. 2,000 people, my Uncle Niu can do that too." To place one's pride forcefully boasted again. Previously, Wang Yu had soloed 2,000 players. However, Wang Yu had only relied on an invulnerability skill to escape unscathed. Taking on a team was pure nonsense. To place one's pride boasted like that, Wang Yu's face turned red. He pulled to place one's pride and said, "Don't talk nonsense." "Mph." Withered Vine Old Tree said again, "I'm talking about the people in real life, the People's Liberation Army." "In real life? What People's Liberation Army?" Hearing Withered Vine Old Tree's words, Wang Yu and Yang Na showed a look of horror at the same time. "What's wrong, old cow? Didn't you always say that this game limits your strength? You can fight 1,000 people in real life, right?" Everyone asked. "Stop messing around." Wang Yu waved his hand and said, "You really think of me as Superman. In real life, there is a physical limit. I can fight 50 ordinary people empty-handed, and I'll be exhausted to death, let alone the People's Liberation Army. Even if I'm young and strong now, I estimate that less than 20 people can push me down." Although Wang Yu didn't know much about the world, martial arts and the army were basically inseparable. He didn't dare to underestimate the strength of a soldier. Not to mention that a soldier had several times the physical strength of an ordinary person. Once a soldier formed a team, the strength was not as simple as 1+1. One person could fight a team of soldiers. In the eyes of Wang Yu, this was the level of a god, let alone ordinary people. No wonder Withered Vine Old Tree had such a high evaluation of the strength of Wu Dongxian. Holy sh**t, is this for real? You can't even beat 20 people with your strength? Chapter 840. It wasn't that the people of Chuanjin were disappointed in Wang Yu, but that Wang Yu had always been synonymous with invincibility in their hearts. However, the sudden collapse of their idol made it difficult for them to accept it. It couldn't be helped. One of them couldn't even guarantee that he could beat 20 people, while the other was a ruthless person who could take on 2,000 people alone. There was a 100-fold difference between them. You're bragging, right? 1 against 2,000. What kind of stamina is that? Yang Na couldn't help but curl her lips. Truly powerful kung fu came from the military. The relationship between martial arts practitioners and soldiers was naturally somewhat ambiguous. Yang Na also understood soldiers. One had to know that soldiers were different from ordinary people. Once soldiers formed a team, their strength wasn't as simple as 1+1. The more people there were, the stronger the cohesiveness. In the face of absolute suppression in numbers, even a boxing grandmaster might be able to survive a few more seconds if he hugged his head and squatted in a corner, not to mention his stamina. Withered Vine Old Tree smiled contemptuously. What do you know? He practices Taiji. He borrows force to fight, not his own. Do you understand? Taiji? Wang Yu scratched his head and turned to ask Yang Na. Your grandfather? In the kung fu circle, only the Yang family and Chun family were good at Taiji. Of course, the so-called borrowing force to fight, not using one's own strength, was nonsense. To be able to borrow force and use more strength than an ordinary attack, although Wang Yu's Taiji cultivation wasn't as good as a real Taiji grandmaster, his strength was still there. He naturally knew more than the average person. However, as for whether there was a deeper level to Taiji, Wang Yu couldn't guarantee it. Therefore, he had to ask a professional like Yang Na. Yang Na said with a dark expression, My grandfather isn't stronger than you. My family has hundreds of years of heritage, and we've never produced such a person. Could it be old Chen's? Wang Yu mumbled again. Yang Na curled her lips. If it's old Chen's, do you think it'll be safe with all the crap your family has done? Wang Yu blushed when he heard that. Yang Na's words weren't false. The Wang family had always been rather domineering, especially old Wang's generation. They were rather unreasonable. Old Wang had even tried to bluff his way out of the matter regarding Wang Yu. It was evident how he usually behaved. The other small sects were fine. The Wang clan would not go to the extent of bullying them. The 4 great clans had frequent dealings with each other, so the ones who suffered losses were naturally the other 3 clans. If the Chen family or the other aristocratic families really had such an expert, they would probably be the first to deal with the Wang family. Even the 4 great families, the representatives of the Kung Fu circle, didn't have such a godly person. Wang Yu couldn't help but sigh. There's always someone better, so the strength of a single team is far from enough to defeat them. Do you want to join us? At this point, the old withered vine tree finally revealed its true face. Just now, everyone was still puzzled. The 2 teams met by chance, and the Harmony team suffered a loss at the hands of Wang Yu. Why would the old withered vine tree take the initiative to please them? It turned out that it was to rope in the people of Chuanjin. Before Wang Yu could speak, Wu Ji smiled and rejected. We appreciate your good intentions, but we of Chuanjin have always liked to be alone. How could it be so easy to join an organization? Without a pledge of allegiance, who would believe you? Maybe half of the dark old equipment that they had just obtained would be given away. The people of Chuanjin were used to eating alone. They really didn't have the bad habit of sharing the spoils of war with others. Aren't you afraid that Lucifer and the people with martial prowess will find trouble with you? Seeing that Wuji was so uncooperative, the old withered vine tree frowned and asked. Wuji imitated the old withered vine tree's tone and sneered. That bunch of trash from the Satan team took away our championship reward. Even if they don't look for us, we will look for them. You don't have to worry about this matter. You must be joking. The old withered vine tree's body swayed when he heard that. What I said just now was not a lie. The old withered vine tree really couldn't understand where Chuanjin got their courage from. They were actually not afraid of martial prowess, and they even threatened to find trouble with Lucifer and veritable dancer. Wuji smiled and said, "I'm not joking. I don't suspect anything, but we of Chuanjin have always been vengeful. We don't care what kind of enemies they are." Seeing that Wuji was stubborn, the old withered vine tree was instantly speechless. In the Chuanjin channel, everyone said, "Wuji, this is a good show. Remember to give us a chance next time." Wuji looked down on them. "If you want to show off, think of your own lines, a bunch of trash." All right then. The old withered vine tree wasn't the kind of person who would persist. Seeing that Chuanjin's group really had no intention of joining them, he only expressed a bit of regret. "If you guys ever think it through and want to join us, you can do so at any time." In the end, the old withered vine tree said to Wang Yu. Wang Yu smiled slightly to show his gratitude. "Thank you very much. Then I'll be taking my leave." After saying that, the old withered vine tree hurriedly led the Harmony team away. This old withered vine tree was really a practical person. After failing to rope them in, he directly drew the line between them. Seeing the Harmony team go far away, the people of Chuanjin revealed a bit of worry, especially Bai Mingyu, who had been bullied by the big guilds. She frowned and said, "Is it really okay to offend someone like that?" Wuji smiled and patted Bai Mingyu's shoulder. He said, "Don't worry. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. But I feel like you discovered something." Wang Yu's observation skills were really meticulous. Hee hee. Wuji laughed wretchedly. "Do you really believe that there's someone stronger than you in the world?" "I can't say that it's too extreme. Actually, I'm not the best fighter in my family," Wang Yu said humbly. "Then what do you think the difference is between you and someone stronger than you?" Wuji asked again. Wang Yu thought about it and said, "Experience, but that Wu Dongqian Kuan is more than 100 times stronger than you. Do you dare believe it?" Wuji said with a sneer. "This?" Wang Yu touched his nose. To be honest, although Wang Yu was modest, he was also a once-in-a-lifetime martial arts genius. It was impossible to say that he didn't have any pride. If someone said that someone's martial arts was slightly better than Wang Yu would admit it. After all, there were still some seniors in the martial arts circle who didn't like to be in the limelight. But if you said that someone was 100 times better than Wang Yu's feelings would immediately be different. Even if he was the youngest martial arts master in the world, he couldn't help but wonder if he was really like what Withered Vine Old Tree said, looking at the sky from the bottom of a well. But he was more suspicious of the authenticity of the matter. However, Withered Vine Old Tree was not a friend of Chuanjin. How could his words be believed? After being enlightened by Wuji, Wang Yu suddenly saw the light, and the confusion in his heart disappeared in an instant. So that kid was bluffing us? Wang Yu asked Wuji. Chapter 841. As the system had already notified them that the rewards had been taken, Chuanjin didn't wait for the rewards like the other teams. Instead, they left the public arena. Even though Old Tree Withered's words weren't true, only martial supremacy's influence in Ares City was definitely huge. Chuanjin's group wasn't afraid of them, but these guys had just made a bunch of things and hadn't digested them yet. They were afraid of trouble, so they left the public arena and headed straight for the teleportation point. Once they returned to Yu Huicheng, they would be in Chuanjin's territory. No matter how strong only martial supremacy was, he wouldn't dare to hunt down Yu Huicheng. After all, Blood Alliance was a reputable guild. How could they allow others to do as they pleased in their territory? After passing through a street, the group had just reached Central Street. When they were less than 50 meters away from the nearest resurrection point, Wang Yu suddenly said in the channel, "Everyone, be careful. There are enemies nearby." "Is that so?" Hearing Wang Yu's words, everyone took out their weapons. "How many people are there?" "Look ahead," Wang Yu replied calmly. Everyone hurriedly raised their heads, only to see a group of people emerge from the crowd on the main street in front of them. Although these people had different equipment, they had one thing in common. They all had the word martial on their chests. If there weren't any surprises, these people were probably only martial supremacy's people. They didn't expect Lucifer to be so efficient. It hadn't been long, and he had already surrounded the teleportation point. This was the best time to see the influence of a big guild. At this moment, when the players on the street saw only martial supremacy coming out to kill people, they all chose to retreat. This was the special privilege of big guilds with influence. If the fist was small, it would be unreasonable. How could it be so easy to watch a fight between big guilds? If one side was unhappy, they could deliberately hit the other side. For those ordinary players, it would be a disaster. At this moment, there were more than 200 only martial supremacy players on the street. Normal players obviously didn't dare to continue staying here. Seeing the enemies in front of them, Chuanjin's people tensed up and gripped their weapons tightly. For Chuanjin's people, 200 people wasn't easy to deal with, but they could still try. Just as they were about to charge over, Lucifer came out from the crowd. Lucifer said with a fake smile, "What a coincidence, I didn't expect to see you guys here." As expected, he was AB*TCH. 200 people were guarding the teleportation point, and their purpose was obvious. It was obvious that this had been arranged a long time ago. This shameless Lucifer still dared to say it was a coincidence. He was really shameless. But this was also reasonable. After all, Lucifer's group had been robbed of 10 full sets of dark gold equipment by Chuanjin, not to mention potions and items. Just the equipment alone was worth a city. It was equivalent to a nuclear warhead in the real world. Lucifer wouldn't let Chuanjin take it so easily. Chuanjin's people had expected this, but they didn't expect Lucifer's group to arrive so quickly. When it came to shamelessness, the Chuanjin sect had never been afraid of anyone. Seeing that Lucifer was pretending to have met them by chance, Wu Ji smiled and replied, "That's right, it's really fate. It's getting late now, Brother Lu. You should rest early. We have to go back as well. Let's drink and chat another day. Please excuse us." "Want to leave?" "Not so easy." At this moment, Beetle Nut came out from behind Lucifer and shouted at Wu Ji. "Oh." Wu Ji tilted his head and said, "Are you going to treat us to a meal? You're too polite. Don't play dumb." Seeing that Wu Ji was playing dumb, Lucifer couldn't pretend anymore. He shouted, "I've brought so many people to wait here. You know what's going on, right?" "Oh, what's going on?" Wu Ji pretended to be confused. At the same time, he gave the order to prepare to attack in the channel. Mingjian Daoxue and Bai Ming Yoyu immediately turned invisible. Oof. At this time, Lucifer could also see that Wu Ji was a troublemaker. If he didn't say anything, he would pretend to be confused. So Lucifer said coldly, "You can leave, but leave the equipment behind." "Equipment? What equipment?" Wu Ji was still pretending. "The dark gold equipment in your bag." Lucifer said straightforwardly, "Oh, the equipment in our bags." Wu Ji said shamelessly, "Why should I give it to you?" Lucifer said angrily, "Don't play dumb. Don't you know whose equipment it is?" Wu Ji laughed and said, "You're a funny kid. Who else could the equipment in our bags belong to?" Lucifer was stunned by Wu Ji's shameless words. Before Lucifer could reorganize his words, Beetle Nut shouted again, "F***CKU. Let's cut the crap. I'll give you two options. 1. Leave the equipment and leave. 2. Let us kill you until you drop it." In the end, Beetle Nut said, "I advise you to obediently hand over the equipment. Otherwise, if we make a move, it won't be as simple as dying once." The probability of players dropping equipment in Rebirth wasn't high. If there wasn't any PK, dying 10 times and dropping one equipment was already very unlucky. If they really allowed them to drop all their equipment, it probably wouldn't work without a few hundred times, being continuously slashed a few hundred times. Even if they weren't slashed to level 10, the long process of death was also a kind of torture. This kind of low-level method was something that the Satan battle team could do easily. "Oh." Wu Ji scratched his nose. "Humph." Seeing that Wu Ji didn't refute, Beetle Nut thought that Wu Ji was afraid. She couldn't help but urge, "Hurry up. As long as you hand over the equipment, we'll write off our grudges." "Is that so?" Wu Ji looked at Beetle Nut and said, "I think there's a third way." "What way?" Beetle Nut asked in a daze. Wuji shielded his eyes with his hand and glanced at Mingji and Daoxue and Bai Ming Yoyu, who were giving him an okay sign. He then said indifferently, "Of course, we'll kill you." Boom, boom, boom. Just as Wuji finished speaking, a series of loud noises came from behind Invincible's group. "It's the Penta Thunder Fruit." Hearing this familiar sound, Lucifer and the others hurriedly turned their heads. They saw the blind, silence, slow, and other control effects appearing on the heads of the long-range classes in the backline. Immediately afterward, Mingjin Daoxue and Bai Ming Yoyu unsheathed their daggers and slithered through the crowd like fishes. Bending their backs, they weaved through unrivaled martial sovereigns crowd-control backline players, reaping one life after another. Chapter 842. Lucifer didn't think that a fight would break out when he led his people to block Xuanzhen's group. Instead, it was mostly to intimidate them. He didn't think that a small team of a dozen or so would dare to clash head-on with a team of 200. Because of this, the 200 players of Invincible Doctrine did not split up into formations. Instead, they huddled closely together. Even the noobs knew to form a group before fighting monsters. Since Invincible Doctrine was so densely populated, it was naturally easy for them to fight. There were 505 Thunderfruits. Xuanzhen's 5 Thunderfruits were stolen. Things that came easily were never sincere. Mingjian Daoxue and Bai Ming Yoyu, who didn't know the value of the 5 Thunderfruits, threw out all the 5 Thunderfruits they had snatched. With so many 5 Thunderfruits thrown out, Invincible's rear line was basically paralyzed. The movement speed reduction wasn't too bad, as it didn't affect the player's attack. However, blind and mute were sure kill skills for archers and mages. This was especially true for chaos, which was even more frightening. The confused players would immediately attack their own allies, and they would even deal damage. Mingjin Daoxue and Bai Ming Yoyu sneaked around this group of crippled players. They first killed the slowed enemies, then stabbed the silenced enemies in the back. The blinded enemies heard the sound and subconsciously fired their arrows randomly, causing the situation to become even more chaotic. When Exquisite Dream and Yang Na started shooting, they didn't even need to aim. They could kill a few players with their random shots. Seeing that his team was in chaos in less than a few seconds, Lucifer was shocked by Xuanzhen's fierceness. He hurriedly ordered a counterattack. Invincible's front row shield bearers raised their shields to block Yang Na and Exquisite Dream's vision. Then, the warrior assassins behind them turned around to grab Mingjian Daoxue and Bai Ming Yoyu. Boom, 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 another thunderous roar rang out. Before the previous wave had subsided, another wave of explosions rang out. It was a time bomb. These two guys had actually installed a bunch of time bombs on the ground. Everyone present was a veteran of 100 battles. When they heard the sound, they immediately recognized the skill. Although the time bomb wasn't very good at concealment, with the current chaos of the only martial artist, no one was looking at their feet, and they stepped on it, the power of the time bomb could even blow Wang Yu to death, let alone the others. Only martial supremacy's formation was blasted into a blank space. Ming Jian Daoxue and Bai Ming Yoyu looked at each other and smiled, before activating second stealth and entering the teleportation point. After 2 waves of bombardment and killing, almost a quarter of Invincible Supremacy's players were dead or injured. Lucifer was furious when he saw that the other side had only sent out 4 people, yet so many of his subordinates had died. Trash! Trash! Hurry up and charge forward. Lucifer cursed as he urged everyone to charge forward and kill the rest of Xuanzhen's team. In the end, before Invincible Supremacy could reach Xuanzhen's team, Spring Soar waved his staff, and a dark barrier and a ground full of thorns sealed off the path. Under the cover fire of Mingdu and 2 archers, To place one's pride, use Flash Chain Kick to create an opening. Then, Inlao Air rushed in and cast an AoE taunt. Finally, Bao Xin used Whirlwind Slash, and Invincible Supremacy's players were once again killed or maimed. The teleportation point wasn't far from the resurrection point. Just as everyone was having a good time killing, Invincible Supremacy resurrected and joined the battle once more. Seeing that the number of enemies was increasing, Mingdu blasted open a path with a blitz shadow and then teleported into the teleportation point. The others also used their own abilities to enter the teleportation point. The teleportation point was a safe zone. Seeing that the 6 of them had entered the teleportation point, Lucifer and the others knew that there was nothing they could do. So, they quickly shifted their target to Wang Yu and Wu Ji and Mu Zixian, who were behind Wang Yu. However, at this moment, a group of murderous guards emerged from behind Wang Yu's team and pounced directly at Lucifer's group. Lucifer was shocked and courted death by giving the command to counterattack. In the game, the system guards represented the system. In front of the system, everything was like an ant. Lucifer dared to act cool in front of the system. One could imagine what would happen to him. For love and peace. The guards shouted and rushed into the crowd to start a massacre. These idiots were ruthless and did not speak much. In just a few seconds, Invincible Supremacy's 200-man team was completely slaughtered. After killing Lucifer's group, the guards changed their target and pounced on Mingdu, who had the highest PK in the teleportation point. Mingdu smirked and disappeared into the teleportation portal together with the others. The guards were slightly stunned. They walked around in a circle in a daze and then left the teleportation portal with heavy footsteps, eating like crazy. Without the endless stream of enemies blocking the way, Wang Yu walked into the teleportation point with Mu Zixian and Wu Ji under the watchful eyes of the Ares City archers in the distance. They turned into a white light and disappeared from Ares City. As the saying goes, good news doesn't go out, but bad news spread for thousands of miles. Central Street was the most prosperous low end of a main city. Even if everyone had deliberately avoided it, no matter how powerful Lucifer was, he could not control the eyes in the distance. Kuteng Old Tree and the others had just left the arena when they received the news. Hearing that Xuanzhen's group had slaughtered Lucifer's 200-man team and left, Kuteng Old Tree's face was full of disbelief. 10 people slaughtered 200 people in less than a minute? Is that true? Kuteng Old Tree asked the player who provided the news in horror. Of course. I saw it with my own eyes. Every player who passes by Central Street knows. The player was very displeased with Kuteng Old Tree's suspicion. Hearing this, Kuteng Old Tree also remembered that he had only been separated from Xuanzhen's group for about 10 minutes. Thinking of this, Kuteng Old Tree hurriedly sent a message to Wu Ji. Congratulations, you've safely escaped. A few seconds later, Wu Ji replied, It's nothing. Hiss, seeing that even the person in question said so. Kuteng Old Tree was stunned and then sucked in a breath of cold air. Now that the level and equipment of players had increased, they were no longer low-level players. Players could easily be killed in an instant. This was especially true for Only Supremacy, a large guild. Naturally, the equipment of his players was also extremely high-end. Yet a dozen or so players had slaughtered 200 players in less than a minute. Just how frightening were these players? Logically speaking, only Martial Supremacy's players had truly died at the hands of Xuanzhen's people. The majority of only Martial Supremacy's players had died at the hands of the guards. Although 50 to 60 people was not a small number compared to a small group of 10, it was definitely not a large number. Only Martial Supremacy's pitiful reputation was indeed undeserved. It cannot be helped. As a player of a big guild, he should be prepared to be slandered. After all, in the process of development, every large guild would inadvertently suppress the players in the same city. This was especially true for Only Martial. With a rat like Lucifer, Only Martial's reputation in the War God City naturally wasn't any better. Defaming him was already considered a light punishment. Chapter 843. The bystanders deliberately spread the rumor, and within the time it took to eat a meal, the incident of Martial Supremacy's 200 players being slaughtered by 10 mysterious people spread like wildfire. There were even people who uploaded the video to the forums. The person who uploaded the video was a scoundrel. In order to disgust Martial Supremacy, he purposely omitted the part where Martial Supremacy was slaughtered by the guards. causing the players on the forums to see martial supremacy's miserable state. Of course, it was not that no one could see the loophole in the video, but the smart ones were few and far between. Moreover, his family and martial supremacy were not related, and he might even have been bullied by Satan's battle squad. So most people chose to wait and see. Occasionally, there were a few righteous people who came out to refute the rumors, but under the preconceived notions of the players, they were instantly accused of being martial supremacy's land cleaners and drowned in the spit of the players. At this time, martial supremacy's true boss was leading his team in the arena. When he received the news, the truth was already beyond recognition. From 10 people killing 200, it became Quan Jun single-handedly annihilating an entire guild and casually raising martial supremacy's guild base. The narrative was so exaggerated and the words used were so dazzling that martial supremacy's nose went crooked in anger. Martial supremacy anxiously sent a message to the vice guild leader. "Old cat, what's going on? How can our base be destroyed while we're at it? Why didn't I, the guild leader, receive any notice?" "Guild base? How can that be? You must have heard wrong." Cat supremacy was baffled to be scolded for no reason. "Then what about the rumor that someone wiped out the entire guild?" Martial Universe felt slightly relieved when he heard that the guild residence was fine. He then continued to ask, "No, it's just that your brother led the first and second platoons to kill people, but they were slaughtered by the guards who were passing by." Cat supremacy explained while wiping his sweat. "My brother?" Martial supremacy was slightly taken aback and immediately questioned Cat supremacy in an extremely displeased manner. "Who gave him the authority to command the guild's people?" "This," Cat supremacy stammered. "He asked me for him, so I gave him to him." Who knew he would be so reckless, even daring to attack the guards? F***CK. Martial supremacy said angrily, "He asked you for him, and you gave him to him? What are you doing as a vice guild leader?" After being yelled at by Wu Dong Qianquan, he felt wronged even if he had a cat's disease. F***CK, that's new. That's your brother. How can I not give him to him? Don't just look at how cat sick was the vice guild leader. No matter how high his position was, he was still an outsider. In the game, the relationships between netizens were very subtle. As Martial Moves Universe's younger brother, Cat Sick didn't dare go against Lucifer's wishes. Perhaps it would be better if something really happened like now. After the matter was settled, it would be clear who was close and who was far away. Only Martial Respect was a large guild, unlike those small guilds that played around. In Only Martial Respect, the position of vice guild leader had real benefits. Crazy Cat did not want to lose his position over a trivial matter. Now that Martial Moves Universe was venting his anger on Cat Sick was extremely depressed. No wonder people said that it was hard to manage a leader's relative. As Lucifer's older brother, Wu Dong Qianquan understood his younger brother's temper. Seeing that Cat Sick wanted to pour out his grievances, Wu Dong Qianquan hurriedly said, "Tell that bastard to wait for us in the meeting room. We'll be there soon." After saying this, Wu Dong Qianquan led his team out of the arena. In reality, Lucifer's Team Satan and Only Martial Respect were two completely different teams. Even though Lucifer and the others were also players of Only Martial Respect, because of Lucifer's bad temper, he didn't get along with the majority of the members. As a result, Martial Moves Universe never gave him any important tasks, and he could only be considered a peripheral character. Because of this, Lucifer pulled a few people he had a good relationship with and formed this Team Satan, completely becoming a Only Martial Respect player in name. In the end, Lucifer didn't have the qualifications to participate in the internal meeting. Now that he heard his older brother inform him to participate in Only Martial Respect's internal meeting, Lucifer was shocked. He knew that he had caused a huge disaster this time, and his older brother was going to punish him. However, Lucifer was also a very straightforward person. Anyway, whether it was a blessing or a curse, he couldn't avoid it. In the end, the fire couldn't be hidden. After receiving the notice, he simply braced himself and went to the guild office. Just as Lucifer arrived at Only Martial Respect's office, before he could even sit down, Wu Dong Qianquan rushed in with a group of people. As soon as they entered the office, Wu Dong Qianquan pointed at Lucifer and asked, "What's wrong with you, kid? What trouble did you cause this time?" Wu Dong Qianquan's aura was very fierce. Even someone as pretentious as Lucifer didn't dare to speak loudly in front of Wu Dong Qianquan. After being questioned by Wu Dong Qianquan, Lucifer lowered his head and said meekly, "I brought people to chase after a battle team, and they got wiped out. I already know about that. I'm asking about the background of that battle team." Wu Dong Qianquan said calmly. "This," Lucifer stammered, "I'm not too sure. I heard that it's Yu Huiqing's team, and they seem to be quite famous." Lucifer wasn't some veteran player. His understanding of Xuanzhen's team was that they were a very strong team, and he didn't know anything about Xuanzhen's background. "You don't even know who your opponent is? What the hell are you guys doing?" Hearing this, Wu Dong Qianquan was about to explode again. Seeing this, someone's sick cat hurriedly added, "We've already found out. That battle team is called Motley Crowd, and they're the main players of Yu Huiqing's Xuanzhen." Xuanzhen? Hearing these 3 words, Wu Dong Qianquan frowned and said in a low voice, "Is it that Xuanzhen?" "Yes, it's that Xuanzhen," someone's sick cat said. F***CKU. Hearing someone's sick cat say this, Wu Dong Qianquan was instantly enraged. He pointed at Lucifer and scolded, "How did you provoke that group of unscrupulous fellows?" Wu Dong Qianquan could be considered a veteran player in the circle. Naturally, he had heard a little about what happened to Xuanzhen. He also knew that this group of people would rather die than be at a disadvantage, and that they would desperately take advantage of others. They were famous for being sticky candy and the kind that had changed. Back in the day, the famous Three Evils manor was said to have taken advantage of this group of scum, and in the end, it collapsed. As the saying goes, good shoes don't step on smelly dog shit. When Wu Dong Qianquan heard that his opponent was this kind of person, he felt as if he had eaten 2 caddies of flies. Seeing such a strong reaction from Wu Dong Qianquan, Lucifer was shocked and hurriedly replied in a low voice, "Those guys stole our equipment." Chapter 844. Oh, I see. After hearing Lucifer's explanation, Martial Universe immediately understood. Clearly, Martial Universe wasn't surprised that his brother would lead a large group of people to kill people over a few pieces of equipment. After all, this wasn't the first time something like this had happened. It was just that in the past, when people heard that he was a martial arts fanatic, they would take the initiative to admit defeat. This time, they were quite unlucky and met a few people who ate raw meat. Thinking up to this point, Wu Dong Universe sighed. "It's not a big deal. It's just equipment. We have plenty of it in our guild. As for fighting over it with that kind of person, listen to me, let's just forget about it. It's not worth it to be angry at that kind of person." Martial Universe had also climbed up from the bottom. He knew what kind of opponent he could provoke and what kind of opponent he couldn't. If a large guild dared to do such a thing, Martial Universe would definitely lead his people to seek revenge. Regardless of whether they won or lost, they would still be an opponent. Meanwhile, the Quanjun sect was an unkillable troublemaker that no large guild wanted to offend. In terms of strength, a small group like Xuanzhen didn't have much of a threat. However, they had nothing to lose. If they provoked this kind of person, they would have to wait for all kinds of revenge. After all, they weren't afraid of thieves stealing, but they were afraid of thieves remembering. Even if they knew that these people couldn't do anything to them, it was still extremely disgusting for them to come out and pour shit on them every now and then. It wasn't worth it to attract a swarm of flies just for a few pieces of equipment. Seeing that Martial Universe was telling the bear with it, Lucifer suddenly became nervous, but they're not stealing normal equipment. Oh, could it be high-level equipment? It can't be a godly equipment, right? Martial Universe said, half-jokingly. The meaning behind his words was clear. It wasn't normal equipment, nor was it particularly overpowered equipment. So what if they stole it? Yes, it's a dark gold equipment. Lucifer nodded. Dark gold equipment. Hearing the words dark gold equipment, Martial Dong Qianquan was a little surprised. He now understood Lucifer's actions. Compared to other MMORPGs, the drop rate of equipment in Rebirth wasn't that high. Even now, dark gold equipment was still the most valuable equipment in the market. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that they were godly equipment. If it was because of the dark gold grade equipment, then it would be understandable for them to chase after Chuanjin's men. 1 or 2. Wudong Universe asked again. No matter how precious a piece of dark gold equipment was, it wasn't to the point where a single piece of equipment would attract a swarm of flies. Of course, if it were 2 pieces of dark gold equipment, he might consider continuing his pursuit. 10 sets. Lucifer almost stuffed his head into his pants when he said this. 10 sets? Wudong Qiankuan was shocked. 10 sets of dark gold equipment? Where did you get them? Don't tell me those 10 sets of equipment are. Speaking up to this point, Marshal Dong Qiankuan's face instantly darkened. F***CK, with the current production of dark gold equipment, how many sets of equipment could there be if you flipped the entire game upside down? Where did the 10 sets of equipment he snatched from Lucifer come from? Did he even have to think about it? Lucifer grunted. F***CK your mother. Seeing that Lucifer was indeed robbed of his 10 sets of equipment, Marshal Dong Qiankuan immediately broke down. He even forgot who his brother's biological mother was. He lifted his leg and kicked Lucifer. Marshal Dong Qiankuan was a chi master. One kick was enough to send Lucifer, a paladin, tumbling. With a chi master's judgment, one could imagine how angry he was. Then, Marshal Dong Qiankuan put his palms together. A fire dragon spiraled out and hovered above Marshal Dong Qiankuan's palms. A level 45 Chi Master's ultimate skill, Flame Dragon Burst, could be used to attack an area of effect or a single target. Its destructive power was no weaker than a mage's lightning shadow. It was a Chi Master's ultimate skill. Boss, calm down. Seeing that Wudong Qiankuan was about to kill Lucifer, Cat Sickness and the rest hurriedly stood up and stood in front of Wudong Qiankuan, blocking him. Calm down my ass. Marshal Dong Qiankuan was so agitated that he couldn't even speak properly. He dispersed the fire dragon in his hand and pointed at Lucifer angrily. If I don't kill him today, he'll definitely piss me off one day. Those 10 sets of equipment were bought by Marshal Dong Qiankuan on the forums with a large sum of RMB. They were Marshal Dong Qiankuan's final trump card. They were prepared to use them in the Pro League. For a large guild like Marshal Dong Qiankuan, who had the support of financial group, spending money was secondary. The most important thing was the rarity of the equipment. Dark gold equipment was already incredibly rare. Now that the Pro League was drawing near, the various teams were busy collecting equipment, making the already scarce equipment even more scarce. These 10 sets of equipment had taken Marshal Invincible a lot of effort to obtain. Now, however, they had all gone to waste just because someone had stolen them. How could Marshal Invincible not be enraged? This was because Lucifer was Marshal Dong Qiankuan's younger brother. If it were anyone else, Marshal Dong Qiankuan would have killed them in real life. Killing Lucifer in the game was just a way to vent his anger. Boss, listen to me. The equipment is already gone. Even if you kill second brother, there's no use. Our current target should be that Chuanjin. Someone crazy cat pulled Marshal Dong Qiankuan and tried to persuade him. You're right. Marshal Dong Qiankuan nodded. He then said, but in my heart, I still hate iron for not becoming steel. Someone crazy cat said, don't you know second brother's temper? If you really piss second brother off, he'll do something even more extreme. Right now, we've already become a joke. If this gets out, do you know how many people will laugh at us? Lucifer's abnormal thinking was no secret among the upper echelons of Marshal Dong Qiankuan. Hearing someone crazy cat's words, Marshal Dong Qiankuan was really persuaded. The reputation of a big guild was still quite important. If they really made Lucifer angry, who knew what he would do? To be able to develop the guild to this extent, Marshal Dong Qiankuan must have done a lot of shameful things. If they were to be exposed, thinking up to this point, Marshal Dong Qiankuan sighed and said, AI, all right, I'll let him go this time. What should we do now? Lucifer saw that Marshal Dong Qiankuan didn't want to kill him anymore. He stupidly asked this childish question. Nonsense, what else can we do? Of course, we'll steal the equipment back. Marshal Dong Chinquan rolled his eyes at Lucifer. Steal it back? They've already returned to Yu Huicheng. Lucifer said awkwardly. Lucifer wasn't an idiot. He knew what the consequences of a cross-city chase would be. Oomph. Marshal Dong Chinquan coldly said, so what? It's just a small group. I'll just greet the big guilds in Yu Huicheng. Chapter 845. In the online gaming circle, big guilds, especially big guilds like only Martial Glory, had their own circles. Even if they were opposing guilds, the guild leaders would still have ways to contact each other. Just like NBA, James didn't necessarily have Duncan's phone number, right? The online gaming circle was even simpler. The so-called way to contact each other was just an ID. It was even easier to add each other as friends. Everyone was a famous person, so of course they wouldn't be called petty just because they added each other as friends. So, in Martial Dong Universe's friend list, there were also friends with the bosses of top guilds like Yu Huicheng. Players like Blood Red War Flag and Captain Don't Shoot were all invited. Even a small character like 2012 was pulled into the chat room by Martial Dong Universe. Who is this? Why are you pulling me? I'm busy. Although this group of important people were friends with each other, they were actually not familiar with each other. Being pulled into a chat room for no reason made the hot-tempered Blood Red War Flag very unhappy. They didn't even see who had invited them before they started shouting. That's right. Hurry up and say it. I'm dungeoning right now. Captain Don't Shoot mumbled. Seeing everyone's opinions, Martial Dong Universe immediately popped up. It's me, Martial Dong Universe. Oh, it's Boss Universe. What's up? Seeing that the invitation was from Martial Dong Universe, Blood Red Alliance, and Captain Don't Shoot immediately calmed down and asked patiently. Only Martial Glory was the biggest guild in the capital city. The guild's strength was only slightly stronger than the guilds in the suburbs. Even people like Blood Red Alliance had to be careful when they spoke, afraid of any conflict. Martial Dong Universe cleared his throat. There's something I want to tell you guys. What is it? Why did you mobilize so many people and even let Boss Universe personally pass the message? Captain Don't Shoot asked curiously. That cross-city battles were hard to say in the first place, especially when they had to talk to the big shots of Yuhui City. It was as if they had to tell the big shots that they had beaten up their people. There was always a sense of being open and boastful. Martial Dong Universe organized his words. Only Martial Dong Universe has some friction with one of Yu Huicheng's guilds. Oh? That can't be right. We're so far away from each other. How could our Yu Huicheng's guild offend you guys? Hearing Wu Dong Universe's words, Blood Alliance was shocked at first, but then they said, only Valiant was a big guild, so anyone who could provoke them was definitely no ordinary person. It was very likely that it was the subordinates of one of the people in the chat room, and it was also likely that it was Blood Alliance. So Blood Red War Flag's reaction was the strongest. Isn't there a competition recently? Wu Dong Universe explained. Oh, is that so? We were in the arena and didn't pay attention to this. When Blood Red War Flag heard that it was because of the preliminaries, they were relieved and hurriedly distanced themselves from him. We're busy too. Don't Shoot also expressed his stance. We didn't even make it through the first round of the qualifiers, said 2012, a little embarrassed. Although this was quite embarrassing in 2012, didn't want to talk about it. It was insignificant compared to the friction with only Valiant. The bosses of the other guilds also had their own reasons. They expressed that they and their subordinates had been behaving themselves during this period of time, and that they hadn't gone on a vacation or anything like that. In short, they definitely weren't the ones who had come into conflict with Martial Dominator. Seeing that everyone was trying to find an alibi for themselves, Wudong Universe knew what everyone was trying to say. He smiled and said, I don't doubt that any of you are in conflict with us. It's just a small guild. We've already investigated their background. The reason why I called everyone here is to ask for your help. Oh, how can we help? Blood Red War Flag asked. Wudong Universe laughed helplessly. After all, it's your Yu Huicheng's people. I'm just an outsider, so it's not good for me to make a move. Are you guys interested in helping me with this? Don't worry, I definitely won't mistreat you. Oh, if that's the case, then you can ask the others. Blood Red War Flag and Captain Don't Shoot weren't interested in Marshal Dong Universe's words. Helping an outsider to deal with a guild in their own main city because of some benefits was the act of a thief. Blood Alliance and Sword in the Heavens weren't just the top guilds in Yu Huicheng. They were also Yu Huicheng's image. Doing something like this was a loss of character. Moreover, they definitely didn't lack this bit of money. On the other hand, 2012 and a few other smaller guild leaders were quite interested. Boss Universe, how did that guild become enemies with you? 2012 asked curiously. Only Valiant was a guild that even Blood Alliance didn't dare to offend. A guild that wanted to use the qualifiers to show off dared to provoke only Valiant. In 2012's eyes, it was clearly asking for death. Marshal Dawn Universe said, "They stole our guild's equipment. *MN. They must be tired of living. They even dared to steal only Valiant's items. Who is so daring? Why didn't you guys catch them in War God City?" A guild leader called Blabbermouth said in shock. This brat really lived up to his name, shooting his mouth off and saying these words in front of Wu Dong Qinquan. He was obviously putting Wu Dong Qinquan on the spot. However, Wu Dong Qinquan did not get angry. Instead, he said regretfully, "Those guys ran away after snatching the items. They even attracted a group of guards. Our men were trampled by the guards. So, we accidentally let them go." Oh, hearing Marshal Dawn Universe say this, not only 2012 and the others, but even Blood Red War Flag and Captain Don't Shoot couldn't help but frown. Stole the items and ran. They even attracted the guards to stop their pursuers. Why did this behavior seem so familiar? It was as if they had seen it somewhere before. Could it be? Thinking about this, Yu Huicheng and the others felt a chill down their spines. 2012 probed, "I wonder what kind of guild this is. How could they be so shameless? It's just a small guild with less than 20 people. I think they're called something like Xuanjin." Marshal Dawn Universe said calmly, as if he was talking about an ant eating a grain of rice from his house. *CK. As soon as Wu Dong Universe said this, everyone cursed in unison. As expected of those guys from the Xuanjin sect, they didn't think that these guys would even dare to snatch something that only martial arts reigned supreme. But then again, in the entire gaming circle, there really wasn't anyone that they didn't dare to snatch. Chapter 846. How about it, bosses? Are you interested? We can discuss the price. Marshal Universe didn't hear the fear in everyone's voice and continued to ask. In Marshal Universe's eyes, these players were already the apex forces of Afterglow City. Dealing with a 20-man guild would be a piece of cake. As for the price that Marshal Universe had mentioned, there was no need to hold any expectations. In his eyes, a small, insignificant guild with less than 20 players wouldn't even be worth a dime. Not interested, not interested. Everyone's reply was surprisingly unanimous. Seeing that everyone was not interested, Marshal Universe thought that they wanted to raise the price. He gritted his teeth and said, "I'll pay 10,000 gold. 10,000 gold. 10,000 gold to deal with a team of less than 20 players. In total, that was more than 500 gold per player. This was the price of hunting top-tier experts in the game. Clearly, Marshal Universe had gone all out to deal with such a small team. Not interested. Everyone's attitude didn't change. This time, Marshal Universe wasn't happy and said unhappily, "You can raise the price, but don't go overboard. If you really can't, then name a price. If I can accept it, then it's a deal." Seeing that Marshal Universe wasn't going to let it go, 2012 said sincerely, "Boss Universe, we don't mean that. Not all problems can be solved with money." What kind of person was Xuanjin? Yu Huicheng knew better. A mere 10,000 gold to buy their trouble? What kind of joke was that? They might even throw in another 100,000 gold. They weren't from a big guild like Blood Alliance, nor were they rich players like Captain Don't Shoot. 100,000 gold was more than enough to take the lives of these small guilds. 2012 said it in a dignified manner, but Marshal Universe didn't care. In his eyes, these people were just trying to raise the price. Before 2012 could finish, Wu Dong Qinquan rudely interrupted. "Oh, do you think I'm being unkind? How about I add another 10,000? Sure enough, Marshall's shaking universe was rich and overbearing. He didn't even bat an eyelid as he increased the price by 10,000 gold. Fine, pretend I didn't say anything. 2012 saw that Marshall Universe was so stubborn and sighed before leaving the chat room. When the others saw that Mr. 2012 had run away, they also retreated. It couldn't be helped. Those guys in Chuanjin were famous for eating people without spitting out their bones. If they knew that he was discussing with others to deal with them, it would be terrible. Since he couldn't afford to offend them, couldn't he just hide? Retreat. Blabbering out of the chat room, Warm Spring Blossoms exited the chat room, leaving the chat room day after day. After a while, only Blood Red War Flag and Don't Shoot were left in Martial Arts Universe's chat room. Wudong Chin Kuan was confused. Just as he was about to say something, the team leader stopped firing and told Wudong Chin Kuan to take care before leaving the chat room. Wudong Chin Kuan was completely dumbfounded. He muttered to Blood Red War Flag, "What is the meaning of this?" Blood Red War Flag, who was also preparing to leave, wiped the sweat off his forehead when he heard Marshall Dong Universe's words. What else could it be? He probably doesn't want to accept it. Why? I've already offered 20,000. Up until now, Marshall Dong Chin Kuan still didn't understand why his money tactic didn't work. Blood Red War Flag didn't answer Marshall Dong Chin Kuan's question. Instead, it asked, "How much equipment did Wuji steal from you? Is it worth it for you guys to go all out?" Marshall Dong Chin Kuan automatically ignored the words all out and replied, "They stole 10 sets of dark gold equipment from us. F***C me." Blood Red War Flag was so shocked by the appetite of the Quanjin sect that it almost jumped up. Only this group of people could steal 10 sets of top-notch equipment from someone else. It's worth it, it's worth it. After a long time, Blood Red War Flag took a deep breath and said, "That was 10 sets of dark gold equipment." If Blood Red War Flag still felt that it wasn't worth it, then they would inevitably be suspected of being sarcastic. Brother War Flag, although I don't want to, I still have to say this. If you guys don't help me, don't blame us for causing trouble for you Huicheng. Marshall Dong Chin Kuan sighed. In the end, he was the leader of a big guild. He understood the importance of being polite before resorting to force. "I think we can use another method?" Blood Red War Flag asked. "Oh," Marshall Dong Chin Kuan said happily. "Brother War Flag, do you have any good ideas?" Blood Red War Flag asked, "How much did you spend on that equipment?" "Nearly 30 million. Marshall Dong Chin Kuan said with a pained expression. Those 10 sets of dark gold equipment were the price of 3 first-rate professional players. In total, they cost nearly 10,000 gold each. Even though Marshall Dong Chin Kuan had the support of a large guild, he couldn't help but feel pained. However, he had no choice. Marshall Dong Chin Kuan was just a high-level worker. These equipment were lost by his own brother. If something happened, Marshall Dong Chin Kuan would have to take responsibility. "If there's a price, then it's easy," Blood Red War Flag said. "I'm familiar with those people from Chuanjin. They aren't the kind of people who want to be noble. As long as there's a price, it's not impossible to negotiate." "Price? What do you mean, War Flag?" Marshall Dong Chin Kuan didn't quite understand Blood Red War Flag's words. Blood Red War Flag could only say, "Anything that can be solved with money isn't a problem. Do you understand, Boss Chin Kuan?" Marshall Dong Chin Kuan finally understood that Blood Red War Flag wanted him to buy it back. "The equipment is mine." Marshall Dong Chin Kuan asked. Blood Red War Flag, "Yes." "Xuanjin took it. That's right. I'll buy it back." "Yes." Blood Red War Flag nodded. "Why? F***CK. Marshall Dong Chin Kuan shouted, scaring Blood Red War Flag. There was no such logic in the world as using money to buy back one's belongings. This was especially true for only Marshall Sovereign, who was also an overlord of a region. Where was his dignity to bow and scrape in front of small group? "I'm just suggesting," Blood Red War Flag hurriedly said. "Oomph." Marshall Dong Chin Kuan coldly snorted. "Since Brother War Flag is looking down on Marshall Dong Chin Kuan, I don't think there's any need for us to talk anymore. When the time comes, Marshall Dong Chin Kuan will be at your doorstep." "No, I'm not looking down on you. I'm just stating the facts. You don't know. Blood Red War Flag hurriedly explained. However, before Blood Red War Flag could finish, Blood Red War Flag received a notification that they had been kicked out of the chat room by Marshal Dong Chien Kun. Damn it. This bastard doesn't listen to the advice of a good person. Blood Red War Flag cursed and sent a message to Wuji. Be careful for the next few days. Someone might cause trouble for you. Blood Red War Flag was a relatively kind person. From the moment they knew Marshal Dong Chien Kun's goal, they advocated for a peaceful solution. It was obvious that they were thinking of Chuanjin. Chapter 847. Wuji was not surprised to receive the news from Blood-Colored War Flag. After all, although the people from Quanjin sect were bad, they were not stupid. Wuji also knew what kind of trouble he had caused this time. Anyone would seek revenge for the smallest grievance against someone weaker than them, not to mention a large guild like martial supremacy. What would come sooner or later. However, Wuji didn't care too much because Chuanjin had already returned to Yuhuicheng. Wuji also knew that no matter how arrogant martial supremacy was, he wouldn't brazenly cross the city to capture people. Players' sense of territory was the strongest in the game. If it really came to that, Chuanjin could just raise their arms and call for help, and Blood Alliance and the other large guilds would have no choice but to act. There was no way martial supremacy wouldn't understand this logic. Of course, everyone understood this logic, but this time, Chuanjin had stolen 10 sets of dark gold equipment. With such a huge grudge, even if martial supremacy didn't dare to use force, he would still think of some other way. The next day, as soon as Chuanjin's people came online, Wang Yu received a system notification. Player Divine Armament wants to add you as a friend. Do you accept? Wang Yu was also a famous person. There were thousands of friend requests like this every day. Normally, Wang Yu would just ignore them, but this Divine Armament's friend request caught Wang Yu's attention. Divine Armament's request was very simple. There were only 3 words: buy equipment. Although Wang Yu didn't care about the details, he knew that Chuanjin had a lot of enemies. Seeing this strange request, Wang Yu was a bit puzzled and asked Ming Jian Daoxue, "Have you put up any information about selling equipment recently?" Ming Jian Daoxue nodded. "Yes, Wuji told me to put up the dark gold equipment on the forums. I left your name." What the Quanjun sect members had snatched from Lucifer were all large pieces of equipment such as helmets, leg armor, and shoes. The original equipment of the Quanjun sect members was not bad, especially the large pieces of equipment they were wearing. They were basically all gold and dark gold equipment. Moreover, after such a long time, the Quanjun sect had almost gotten used to their own equipment. Therefore, the Quanjun sect did not have much need for those pieces of equipment. Since they didn't need it, the most direct way was to get rid of it first and then split the money. Letting Ming Jian sell it on the forums was naturally the most effective method. The reason why he put up Wang Yu's name was mainly to intimidate the small fry. He wanted them to know that the people selling the equipment were all experts, so they shouldn't have any ill intentions and shouldn't talk nonsense. It must be known that Wang Yu's fierce reputation was still very intimidating in Afterglow City. After being filtered by Wang Yu, most of the people who dared to inquire about the price were really interested customers. I see. Hearing Ming Jian Daoxue's words, Wang Yu easily approved Armament's request. I heard that you have a lot of dark gold equipment. After Armament's request was approved, he didn't beat around the bush and went straight to the point. Wang Yu directly replied, "Yes. Can I take a look at the goods first?" Armament asked again. "Sure. You can come to 24 Unity Street. Our office is here." After asking for Wuji's opinion, Wang Yu sent his group's address to Armament. After receiving Wang Yu's message, Armament didn't reply immediately. Instead, he replied after a while, "Oh, I'm at Central Street. Just go through an alley. Can you come over?" He wants us to go over. Seeing Armament's request, Wang Yu said to Wuji unhappily, "Why do I feel a little uncomfortable with this guy? Is he trying to pick a fight? I've never seen such a big customer before." To be fair, Wang Yu had played the game for a long time and had sold countless equipment. Because Wang Yu was a famous expert, most of the customers would rush to see Wang Yu. Even if they didn't rush to see Wang Yu, They wouldn't ask Wang Yu to look at an equipment. After all, equipment was always in high demand. Even if you didn't want it, there would be more people fighting for it. There was no need for a player to act like a bootlicker. It was Wang Yu's first time seeing a customer asking Wang Yu to personally look at an equipment like armament. It was natural for Wang Yu to feel conflicted. Wu Ji, on the other hand, had seen a lot of things. He laughed and said, "How many people have you met? The players in the game with money are all like that. They think that they can be so arrogant just because they have money. In their eyes, not to mention a player selling equipment. Even the system GM has to call the masters." That's right. We finally have a big customer. Old cow, don't be stubborn. Mingdu and to place one's pride were jumping up and down. At the end of the day, the equipment was stolen. It would be troublesome to keep it. It was rare to see a customer who could buy such a large amount of equipment. At this time, the customer was in Wang Yu's hands. Everyone was afraid that Wang Yu would lose his temper and tell the customer that he shouldn't be greedy. Yin Lao Air and Bao San also advised, the game isn't like those sly businessmen in real life. The players with money in the game are all second-generation kids. They have low EQ and speak like that. Old cow, don't mind them. All right, I'll go. There was no other way. Wang Yu couldn't beat everyone. Seeing that everyone said so, Wang Yu could only sigh and agree to go. I'll go with you. At this time, Wu Ji volunteered and stood up. What are you going to do? Seeing that Wu Ji wanted to go with Wang Yu, everyone's eyes narrowed into slits. Wu Ji said, Old Cow's ability to sell equipment is far inferior to his fighting ability. Are you guys really going to let him sell it? Everyone was speechless when they heard this. What Wu Ji said was right. Wang Yu never haggled with others when selling his equipment. No matter how much others try to lower the price, he would always lower the price. Fortunately, this kid had a high production rate. Otherwise, he would have already starved to death by selling his equipment like this. Wu Ji was the Quanjin sect's most adept at swindling people. In this aspect, he was the exact opposite of Wang Yu. If Wu Ji followed Wang Yu, everyone would definitely not worry about the price. Similarly, because Wu Ji was good at swindling people, everyone would also be worried. If Wu Ji goes, then I'll go too. Mingdu stood up. What are you going to do? Wu Ji frowned. Protect the equipment. Mingdu said. You don't trust Old Cow? I don't trust you. Mingdu replied. Wu Ji was good at scamming people. Of course, he wasn't just good at scamming people. When he was angry, he would even scam himself, let alone his companions. Everyone had 100% trust in Wang Yu. As for Wu Ji, everyone was afraid that Wang Yu would be sold and they would have to count the money for Wu Ji. I'll go too. Chapter 848. Unity Street and Central Street were next to each other. The closest way was through the alley that Hermit was in. Wang Yu was very familiar with this path. According to the address given by Weapon of God, Wang Yu and the others passed through the alley and arrived at Central Street. They then turned and entered another alley before finding Weapon of God's house. Before entering Weapon of God's house, the moment they entered this narrow alley, Wu Ji and the others were a little uneasy. This place, if there was an ambush team, none of us would be able to escape. Mingdu looked around the alley and rubbed his chin. Xuanjin's people were used to being chased and killed. They had a strong sense of resistance. In this narrow alley, they could feel a murderous aura. Pooey. Shut your stinky mouth. Hearing Mingdu's words, to place one's pride, kicked Mingdu to the ground. The others followed up with a few more kicks. Saying such inauspicious words in such an unsafe environment was too much of taboo. One had to know that Xuanjin's people had a lot of equipment on them. If Mingdu was right, this was also the reason why players had to provide the address of the player who was selling their equipment to them. Gold coins wouldn't drop, and the buyer would at most be killed once. However, if the seller was killed and dropped their equipment, they would suffer a huge loss. The reason why Xuanjin's people dared to come here to trade was because Xuanjin's reputation was very wild in Yuhuichen. Even big guilds like Blood Alliance and Sword in the Sky didn't dare to do anything to them, let alone the other smaller guilds. However, because of Mingdu's warning, everyone raised their guard. Although they knew that Yu Huiqing's people wouldn't dare to do such a thing. What if there was someone who didn't have eyes? They had been through a lot, and it would be disgusting if they failed miserably. Arriving in front of the house, Wang Yu sent a message to Divine Weapon, and the door opened. In the game setting, the house was also a safe zone. Xuanzhen's group lacked a sense of security in the alley, so when the door opened, Xuanzhen's group went in noisily. Weapon of God's house was not small. It was also a large conference room. It seemed that this guy really did not lack money. At this time, there were only 2 people sitting in the room. Other than the heavily armored warrior Weapon of God, there was also a middle-aged man who was dressed similarly to Wang Yu. That person was also a grandmaster of combat. He was wearing cloth armor and was drinking from a teacup. In Rebirth, there was a tea set, but there was no tea. Those who liked to show off could only use alcohol in place of tea. It was also very nondescript. Obviously, Divine Weapon didn't expect that there would be so many people coming to Xuanzhen to sell their equipment. They were stunned. Didn't I tell you to come alone? The expression on Weapon God's face was a little strange. Wang Yu spread his hands helplessly and said, "They want to protect their equipment." Weapon of God's face darkened as he looked at the middle-aged man not far away and sent a private message. "What should we do?" The middle-aged man replied without changing his expression, "You came at the right time. I was worried about finding them one by one." Hee. After replying, the middle-aged man stood up and laughed. "There are only the 2 of us here. You don't need so many people to protect the equipment, do you?" The middle-aged man obviously misunderstood. The protective equipment that Wang Yu mentioned was to guard against Wuji. The middle-aged man thought that Wuji was talking about it and laughed. Hee, I said that too, but it is necessary for them. The middle-aged man glanced at the Xuanzhen people behind Wuji and laughed coldly. At this time, Wuji said again, "If I'm not wrong, this is the Wudong Universe boss who is the only martial artist." "Oh, how do you know?" The middle-aged man was stunned and asked in surprise. Wuji pointed at the guild badge on his chest and said, "When it comes to buying equipment, I don't think anyone else would dare to make the decision." The badge on the middle-aged man's chest was the same as Lucifer's. They both had the word Wu. Moreover, the transaction this time was for 10 sets of dark gold equipment. This was a huge sum of money. Those who did not have the right to speak in the guild would definitely not have the right to discuss it. They had long heard that Wudong Universe was a grandmaster of combat, so this person in front of them was most likely Wudong Universe. "Ha!" Wudong Universe laughed and said, "I've long heard that Leader Wuji is extraordinarily intelligent. Today, I've seen that you live up to your reputation. Since we've already said this, we can't help but speak openly. Leader Wuji, do you know why I'm here this time?" "I do." Wuji smiled and said, "To buy equipment. You name a price. As long as my brothers are satisfied, we'll consider this business deal a done deal." What kind of person was Wuji? From the moment he saw Wudong Universe's identity, Wuji knew Wudong Universe's purpose. This son of AB *TCH really wanted to play dirty. After all, they were in Yu Huiqing's hands now, and the equipment was in the hands of Xuanzhen's people. Of course, Wudong Universe knew that it was not good to deal with Xuanzhen's people in Yu Huiqing's place. The reason why Wudong Universe asked Wang Yu to bring the equipment to him was to take down Wang Yu. Then, the people at the revival point would take turns to farm Wang Yu until all the equipment was dropped. This way, it would save effort, and it would not cause a commotion. As for Xuanzhen's revenge for stealing the equipment, there was still a long way to go to be able to come up with such a despicable idea. It could be seen that these martial arts revered people were quite smart. However, these smart people neglected a very important problem, and that was, how could the people of the Xuanzhen sect use normal thinking to guess? The meaning behind Wuji's words was also very clear. "Our brothers are all here. If you don't satisfy us, I'm afraid we won't be able to talk about the deal. Name a price." Wudong Universe frowned and said with a cold smile, "Leader Wuji, are you kidding me? This equipment is ours to begin with." "Boss Universe, is this your first time playing?" Wuji asked. "Look at my age. Do I look like it's my first time?" People in the gaming circle hated it when people looked down on their gaming age. Wudong Universe was a little unhappy with Wuji's words. Isn't that right? Wuji said. Since you've played for so long, have you seen a player who lost equipment in PK and still had the cheek to say that the equipment was his? Wuji's words stunned Martial Moves Universe. After playing the game for so long, Martial Moves Universe was well aware of the unspoken rules of the game. Claiming that the equipment belonged to you after it was dropped was the typical behavior of a primary school student. But even though he said that, Martial Moves Universe felt that something was wrong. Wudong Qianquan's face turned red at first. Then he finally realized what was wrong. So he asked Wuji in an interrogative tone, "I heard that you were the one who took this equipment from my brother." Chapter 849. Does that mean that Wuji is determined to keep the equipment for himself? Seeing how determined Wuji was, Wudong Universe's expression became even uglier. Wuji smiled. That's new. As long as the price is right, there's no need to worry about selling all this good equipment. Xuanjin is easy to negotiate with. As long as you pay, we'll sell it. Don't you feel guilty? Wudong Universe said angrily. Wuji's meaning was clear. If Wudong Universe didn't buy the equipment, he would sell it to someone else. With the current demand for dark gold equipment, Wudong Universe definitely wouldn't doubt the market's demand. Seeing how fearless Wuji was, he definitely wouldn't think that Wudong Universe was the only one who could sell the equipment. Wudong Universe had been in the gaming circle for so long, and no one had ever dared to treat him like this. Now that Wuji had made it clear that Wudong Universe had to suffer in silence, how could Wudong Universe tolerate him? Guilty? Hee hee. Wuji laughed. I got the equipment with my own strength. What's there to feel guilty about? Okay, Wudong Universe said, then sneered. In that case, we can only get the equipment back. Legendary weapon. Send them off. And the divine armament responded and casually revoked the authority of the Quanjun sex group. With a flash of white light, the people of Xuanjin were teleported into that narrow alley. Immediately after, Wudong Universe and the divine weapon chased after them. Just as Xuanjin was about to get rid of Wudong Universe and legendary weapon, Wuji suddenly said, "Ignore them. Let's get out of here first." This was a typical ambush. Once they were surrounded, the consequences would be unimaginable. Xuanjin naturally understood what Wuji meant. After Wuji said that, they ran out. However, they hadn't taken more than a few steps when a row of shield warriors smashed their shields onto the ground, crisscrossing each other to block the entrance of the alleyway in front of them. The shield warriors crouched down, revealing a row of arrows at the gap where their shields crossed. Behind the shield bearers and archers, there were mages, warriors, and other occupations. There was a dense mass of people, at least a few hundred of them. They surrounded the entire intersection. Other than retreating, Xuanjin's men had no choice but to retreat. Wuji saw that things were not looking good and decisively ordered, "Go back." Upon receiving the order, the Xuanjin people turned around and fled in the opposite direction. However, just as they turned around, they realized that the other end of the alley was also filled with people. It was also a dark mass of people completely blocking the other end of the alley. Damn it, we've been surrounded. Seeing the two groups of people blocking the way, the Quanjun group's hearts sank. If they were on a wide road, it would be fine. No matter how tight the encirclement of hundreds of people was, there would still be loopholes. But now that everyone was blocked in an alley, the space for escape was much smaller. Not to mention the hundreds of players chasing after them. Even a team of several dozen players would be covered in a single wave of attacks. Sure enough, Martial Shakes the Universe had some tricks up his sleeve. Xuanjin's group was relatively difficult to deal with. They had experienced countless battles, large and small. Yet, none of the guilds had managed to force them into such a corner with so few players. Are we still going to run? Why don't we fight it out with them? Seeing that they were surrounded by players, Bao San's courage returned. He brandished his greatsword, intending to risk his life. Exquisite Dream slapped the back of Bao San's head. Nonsense. If we don't run, are we going to borrow arrows from a straw boat? Where do we run? Inlao Air asked anxiously. The houses on both sides of the alley were different from the houses on the street. The houses on the street were built from short to tall. Players could easily reach them with their movement skills. However, the houses on both sides of the alley were completely different. Currently, the buildings on both sides of the alley where the Quanjun sect was located were incomparably tall. Players wouldn't even be able to see the sunlight, so they definitely wouldn't be able to reach the top with just a few movement skills. Even if Wuji could fly, with so many people surrounding him, he wouldn't be able to guarantee his safety. In order to prevent the Quanjun sect's players from escaping, Martial Movement's universe had really gone to great lengths. Clearly, Martial Shakes the Universe did not underestimate Quanjun's team. After all, they were a team that could easily break through a 200-man encirclement. Even with the help of the guards, ordinary players couldn't accomplish such a feat at this moment. Wuji said, "We can't run anymore. Have Old Cow take the equipment and leave first." Saying so, Wuji waved his staff. A red light flew out and enveloped Yinlao air. At this time, Martial Only's arrows and spells were already flying over. Yinlao air gritted his teeth and raised his shield, blocking the attack from the left. Chun Xiang summoned a demon and Angela to block the attack from the right. The others hurriedly tossed the equipment in their bags to the ground for Wang Yu to pick up. The alleyway wasn't that big, and only Valiant had several hundred people with him. The level of attack was very clear, and as soon as the first round of attacks fell, the second wave of attacks followed closely behind, blasting Chun Xiang and Yin's second brother. There were no weaklings among the players of the big guilds. Their equipment and mechanics were all at a high level. Even if Chun Xiang and Yinlao air could tank, they couldn't withstand the continuous attacks. In the first round of attacks, Chun Xiang and the demon were completely annihilated. In the second round of attacks, Angela and Chun Xiang both died. Seeing this, everyone hurriedly stood in front of Wang Yu. At the same time, Martial Only's third round of attacks fell. Apart from Yang Na and Bao San, everyone else was killed. At this time, Yinlao Air's invincibility ended. Yinlao Air, who had put away his shield, was instantly reduced to critical health. This was the power of the big guilds. No matter how high an expert you were or how overpowered your equipment was, once you were surrounded, you wouldn't even have a chance to fight back, let alone fight back. There was no helping it. No one could withstand this kind of continuous attacks. Xuanjin's group was already very fierce. They were able to last until the fourth round. If it was anyone else, they probably wouldn't even be able to withstand the first round of attacks and would be killed. There were only so many ways a big guild could bully a small guild. First, they would work together to surround and kill, then ambush Luan Bai at the resurrection point. Naturally, Martial Only had a high level of proficiency with Martial Only. When he gave the order to surround Xuanjin's group, he had already arranged for people to surround the resurrection point. If Xuanjin's group died, they wouldn't be able to return in time to provide support. Seeing that Martial Only's fourth round of attacks was about to reach his head, Wuji casually slapped a holy light shield to protect Wang Yu. Then, a rain of arrows fell. Wuji, Bao San, and Yang Na transformed into white lights and disappeared before Wang Yu's eyes. Under the protection of the invincibility effect, the attacks that landed on Wang Yu were all deflected. At the same time, Wang Yu picked up the last piece of equipment. "You'll regret this." Wang Yu turned his head to look at Martial Only and said these words. He then leaped into the air. Facing the attacks from both sides, Wang Yu jumped 4 times in a row and disappeared from everyone's sight. Oomph. Seeing Wang Yu escape, Martial Only snorted indifferently. He then turned to the 2 players in the alley and said, "Everyone, chase him down the street. Keep the equipment on that brat. Don't let him escape." Chapter 850. The scene in the alley was witnessed by Wang Yu on the rooftop. Seeing that the martial supremacy players had really left, Wang Yu couldn't help but send a message to Wuji. "Hey, they're really gone." "Of course," Wuji replied calmly. "You can go down and get rid of martial supremacy now." "Okay," Wang Yu replied, pressed the eaves, and jumped down from the roof. It turned out that Wu Ji had instructed Wang Yu from the beginning not to rush to escape once they were on the roof. They were to wait on the roof for the only martial artist to leave before jumping down to finish off martial artist universe. The reason why Wu Ji was so confident was because he knew that Wu Dongqiankuan's main goal was the equipment. Now that the equipment was in Wang Yu's hands, the others were basically unimportant. All he needed to do was to restrain the others and not let them come out and cause trouble. Of course, Wu Ji also knew that a large guild like Martial Supremacy had tens of thousands of players. It was unrealistic for a dozen or so people to go against them. Moreover, they didn't lack people. Even if you killed a few hundred of them, they wouldn't feel the slightest bit of pain, but if they killed 10 of you, you would be completely wiped out. Therefore, it was absolutely impossible to deal with Martial Supremacy recklessly. Every kill had to be an effective one. What was an effective kill? An effective kill was the simplest way to make Martial Supremacy feel pain. Therefore, the most effective way was to kill the core members of Martial Supremacy who had the right to speak. Only Martial Supremacy had more than 10 core members, but the Quanjun sect only knew one of them, and that was Wu Dongqiankuan. As the leader of Martial Supremacy, Wu Dongqiankuan definitely had the most authority. Killing him was definitely more effective than killing anyone else. There was no need to make Martial Supremacy a chicken feather or duck blood. As long as Martial Supremacy was afraid, Chuanjin would have achieved his goal. Wu Dongqiankuan had sent all his subordinates to hunt down Wang Yu. Just as he was about to return to his house to indulge in the thrill of strategizing, he suddenly heard a loud shout from the sky. "Where are you running, monster?" "Sorry, that's wrong. It should be trying to run after acting like a hero." Following that, a figure descended from the sky. That person was tall and sturdy, holding a long staff in his hand. Who else could it be but Wang Yu? Without waiting for Wu Dongqiankuan to make a move, Divine Armament Sharp Weapon stepped forward and raised his two-handed sword horizontally, wanting to block Wang Yu. Divine Weapon. This brat had deceived Wang Yu and caused everyone in Chuanjin to die without a burial ground. Wang Yu had long wanted to kill him. Now that he had taken the initiative to come out and die, he was playing right into Wang Yu's hands. Wang Yu took a step in the air and thrust the staff in his hand forward. It passed through the gap between Divine Weapon and stabbed Divine Weapon's nose. Oh my God! Divine Armament, who had been stabbed by Wang Yu, felt his nose sting. He screamed and closed his eyes involuntarily, squeezing out a few drops of tears. At the same time, Wang Yu turned the staff in his hand back into a glove and flipped it forward to the back of Divine Armament Sharp Weapon's head. Then he stabbed the fingers of his right hand into Divine Armament Sharp Weapon's nostril. The instant Wang Yu landed, Divine Armament Sharp Weapon's head was involuntarily pulled back. At this time, Wang Yu wrapped his left hand around Divine Armament Sharp Weapon's throat and used Neck Snap. Divine Armament Sharp Weapon was a strength-type weapon, so his HP was not too high. After taking 3 hits from Wang Yu at his vitals, he turned into a flash of white light. However, no matter how low Divine Armament Sharp Weapon's HP was, he was still a warrior. It had only been 3 seconds since Wang Yu jumped off the roof and landed on the ground, yet he had actually killed a warrior with just a raise of his hand. This caused Wu Dongqiankuan to be slightly shocked. However, this hint of surprise disappeared quickly. Looking at Wang Yu, who was wiping his hands on the wall in front of him, Wu Dongqiankuan chuckled and said, "Young man, not bad. You block my way and kill my people." Wang Yu also laughed and said, "You're not bad either. You saw me kill someone, and yet you didn't run." "Oomph. Young man, don't be so arrogant." Wu Dongqiankuan snorted and said, "Your little ability is not enough." Then Wu Dongqiankuan said, "In the end, you're just a normal person. You don't know what Kung Fu is. I advise you to hand over your equipment." "Is that so?" Wang Yu looked at Wu Dongqiankuan, who was pretending and could not help but ask, "I heard that you can fight a regiment of People's Liberation Army. Hee, since you know how powerful I am, why don't you hurry up and surrender?" Wu Dongqiankuan said with a sneer. "I don't believe it." Wang Yu waved his finger and said, "Don't talk about a regiment of People's Liberation Army. I don't think you can even beat a police dog in reality." Wang Yu's words were not groundless. Before seeing Wu Dong Qiankuan, Wang Yu still maintained an ambiguous attitude towards Wu Dong Qiankuan's strength. However, after seeing Wu Dong Qiankuan, Wang Yu could basically affirm that this grandson was a big liar. People who practiced martial arts were the same as soldiers. They fought and killed, so they had to undergo a lot of training. Whether it was muscles or reactions, they were much better than ordinary people. Even when they walked, they were much more stable than ordinary people. On the other hand, Wu Dong Qiankuan walked lightly and swayed. He did not look like a person who practiced martial arts at all. It was as if he was bragging. Bullshit. Wu Dong Qiankuan's face immediately darkened after hearing Wang Yu's words. He spread his arms like he was hugging a ball and said, "Today, I will let you see what Kung Fu is." Seeing Wu Dong Qiankuan's posture, Wang Yu smiled slightly and said, "What Kung Fu is this?" "Tai Chi," Wu Dong Qiankuan said with a serious expression. "Don't insult Tai Chi." Wang Yu's face was filled with black lines as he stepped forward, grabbing Wu Dong Qiankuan's outstretched arm with one hand. His right leg extended towards Wu Dong Qiankuan's heel as he exerted force with his shoulder, slamming into Wu Dong Qiankuan. Before Wu Dong Qiankuan could react, he was thrown to the ground. When an expert made a move, it was obvious whether or not he was skilled. Wu Dong Qiankuan's posture might be able to fool old people and old ladies, but in front of Wang Yu, he revealed his true colors. Fortunately, it was not Yang Na here. Otherwise, who knew how Yang Na would deal with Wu Dong Qiankuan's actions of smearing Tai Chi's reputation? It should be known that women were much more ruthless than men when they were angry. It was true that Wu Dong Qiankuan was a great swindler, but to be able to become the boss of Wu Dong Qiankuan and the captain of a professional squadron, he definitely had some ability. After being thrown to the ground by Wang Yu, Wu Dong Qiankuan did a backflip and quickly used quick recover. With a fierce stomp of his feet, he floated out of Wang Yu's attack range. Against the wind, this was a movement skill of Qi masters. It was a movement skill that relied on one's inner strength to move backwards. Although it wasn't as fast and violent as collapsing fist, it had the demeanor of a grandmaster. It was an essential skill for Qi masters to show off. Although Wu Dong Qiankuan had been thrown to the ground by Wang Yu, he was still a classic king of all mouths. His face had been thrown all the way to his grandmother's house, yet he still continued to talk. "Young man, you've already been hit by my inner strength. Hurry up and go see a doctor." Faced with such a shameless person, Wang Yu was completely speechless. He took a step forward and blocked the door. Chapter 851. As he got into position, Wu Dongxian muttered, "Good lad, Taiji Fist can't do anything to you. This time, I'll show you my 8 trigram palm." What kind of hearing did Wang Yu have? Wu Dongxian's words entered Wang Yu's ears at such a close distance. Seeing that Wu Dongxian was going to destroy 8 trigram palm after destroying Taiji Fist, Wang Yu's anger burned to his head. 8 trigram palm was so miserable that it was about to be cut off, but Wu Dongxian was still using the name of 8 trigram palm to swindle people. Now that he was in the hands of Wang Yu, the last successor of 8 trigram palm, there was no way he could get away scot-free. 8 trigram palm my ass. Even though Wang Yu had cultivated his body and mind for many years, the murderous aura that he had cultivated for many years burst forth. With a roar, he took a step forward and raised his palms, slapping them at Wu Dongxian. Apart from swindling people, Wu Dongxian was quite strong. Seeing Wang Yu rush over, his figure flashed, and he activated Headwind Step to fly back lightly. At the same time, he crossed his palms and slapped the air 3 times. 3 palm-shaped flames flew in an arc towards Wang Yu. Fire Cloud Palm could attack the target 3 times with fire element magic, and it also had a burning attribute. The Grandmaster Combat class was already rare in Rebirth. Even if they chose to be a Grandmaster of Combat, most of the players would choose the Striker class, which was agile and had thick skin. As a result, the number of Qi Master players in the game could be counted in the tens of thousands. The number of Qi masters that could be considered experts could be counted on one hand. If they really had to be ranked, Wu Dongxian would definitely be one of them. The fire cloud palm of ordinary Qi masters would be launched in a straight line, attacking the target one after the other. Wu Dongxian's hands trembled, and the 3 fire cloud palms flew towards Wang Yu from 3 directions, locking down all of Wang Yu's dodging points. However, no matter how good Wu Dongxian was, he was only a fake master in Kung Fu. When it came to the fearsomeness of a true martial artist, his knowledge couldn't even compare to that of Qiuanjin. A trigram palm was also known as the wandering palm. Before practicing the palm, one had to practice the movement technique first. Wang Yu's 8 trigram palm was already in the realm, so he naturally didn't care about Wu Dongxian's attacks. Wang Yu lowered his head, crouched down, and turned around, directly passing through Wu Dongqian's 3 fire cloud palms. Before Wu Dongqian could react, Wang Yu had already flown over and raised his palm to chop Wu Dongqian's neck. Wu Dongqian was only a Qi master, Qi, and Qian. Wu Qian was Qian. Wu Qi master a Wu Dongxian, Wu, and Wu didn't. Wu, Qian, and Dongxian, and a Wu, too, and Wu did not. Wu tu with you a Dongxian. Yang, palm. Wu, Qian Wu of, Wu Qian Wu. Wu is, too, dead. Wang Yu answered honestly. Run. Their people are going back. Come to the revival point and save us. We can help you, said Wuji. Although Wu Dongxian Wu was dead, a skinny camel was still bigger than a horse. In a guild as big as Wu Dongxian, Wang Yu would not be able to do much without help. The people for Qiuanjin were good at guerrilla warfare. At the very least, they could help Wang Yu share some of the pressure. Unexpectedly, Wang Yu rejected. You guys can rest at the revival point for now. This is a personal grudge between me and Wu Dongxian. Personal grudge? This isn't the first time you've met? Hearing Wang Yu's words, Wuji was stunned. The two of them didn't know each other at first. Could it be that Wang Yu was kicked in the crotch by Wu Dongxian? Wang Yu's family was particular about many things. One of them was to be unfilial and have no descendants. This was definitely a blood feud. It has nothing to do with when we met. This is about the pride of a martial artist. Wang Yu said. He closed the chat window and leaped onto the wall. Wuji was not a martial artist. He could not understand Wang Yu's words. The history of Huaxia Kung Fu could be traced back to more than 5,000 years of Huaxia's history. Even 100 years ago, Huaxia Kung Fu had not declined. There was even a saying that Huaxia Kung Fu had a long history. In the history of China, although Kung Fu had risen and fallen a few times, it had always blossomed due to the chaos of war. However, when cold weapons were no longer seen by humans, Kung Fu also gradually faded. However, due to people's yearning for the strong, Kung Fu did not decline. Instead, it was gradually turned into a myth. At this time, some swindlers like Wu Dongxian began to use the tiger's skin as a banner. Under the guise of Kung Fu, they went around swindling people to earn money and cheat people. One of them could fight 100 people alone, while the other had the strength of 1,000 caddies. They used a set of fallacious theories to package themselves as the masters in the myth. Little did they know that the cultivation of Kung Fu was not just a bluff. Instead, it required decades of hard work. Even with Wang Yu's unprecedented talent, he still needed to do all kinds of training every day to strengthen his strength, speed, and reflexes to achieve what he had. How could the empty words of those fake masters last forever? Because of this, the term Kung Fu gradually turned from a myth to a scam. Later on, it was even suspected to be a self-delusion culture. Since then, the path of Kung Fu had never recovered. Now, it had become something that only existed in legends. How sad was that? At the end of the day, the main culprit behind the decline of Kung Fu was those swindlers. Wu Dongxian had used the name of Kung Fu to deceive countless people. How could Wang Yu suppress the anger in his heart when he saw Wu Dongxian, a person who had deceived the thing he had been pursuing for his entire life? At this time, there was only one thought in Wang Yu's mind. and that was to make Wu Dongqian pay the price, even if it meant risking his dignity as a martial artist. As Qi masters were not a strong one-on-one class, Wu Dongqian did not realize how terrifying Wang Yu was after he resurrected. He only sighed at Wang Yu's extraordinary skills, then ordered his subordinates to block Wang Yu in the alley while running out of the resurrection point. However, as soon as Wu Dongqian reached the street, he was blocked by a burly figure. When Wudong Universe raised his head and saw that it was Wang Yu, he was shocked. He subconsciously floated backwards, and, at the same time, he sent a Cloud Palm at Wang Yu. Cloud Palm was only a low-level skill for Grandmasters of Combat. Its power was not even comparable to Wave of Will. In front of a high-damage player like Wang Yu, it was obviously not worth mentioning. Wang Yu casually waved his hand, dispersing Martial Dongqian's Cloud Hand Palm and sending a collapsing fist towards Martial Dongqian. Seeing Wang Yu flying towards him, Martial Dongqian landed on the ground and sent a side kick towards Wang Yu's head. Rebirth had always focused on the concept of 8 points in kicks, which was why kicking skills had always had higher priority. Just as Wu Dongqian was about to send Wang Yu into the air with a stomp, Wang Yu suddenly landed on the ground with an eagle stamp. His collapsing fist turned into a ferocious tiger strike as he reached forward and grabbed Wu Dongqian's ankle. Chapter 852. As a normal man, Wu Dongqian naturally did not need to be described what was between his legs. Wang Yu's elbow was fast, vicious, sending Wu Dongqian to the resurrection point once again. Martial Universe's face was dark when he resurrected. Although he could not feel pain in the game, the psychological impact of being hit in a vital area would probably weaken him for a period of time. After being killed by Wang Yu twice in a row, Martial Universe finally had a taste of Wang Yu's strength. Martial Universe had always been proud of himself as an expert, and the people he came into contact with were all experts. However, he had never met such a powerful opponent. After all, no one dared to say that they could instantly kill Wu Dongqian. However, not only did Wang Yu manage to do it, he managed to do it twice in a row. How could Wu Dongqian not be terrified? That Grandmaster of Combat is outside the resurrection point. Everyone, come and capture him. Wu Dongqian also knew that it was impossible for him to defeat Wang Yu alone. Therefore, he immediately gave the order to surround and attack. Apart from the players surrounding the Quanjin sect in the alley, Wu Dongqian had also arranged quite a number of players at the resurrection point. After receiving Wu Dongqian's order, the ambushing players immediately rushed out of their hiding spots. There were 7 resurrection points in the central street, and more than 100 players rushed out. 100 players was not a big deal in the crowded central street, but 100 of them rushing at Wang Yu at the same time was quite eye-catching. Yu Huiqing's players were shocked when they saw the situation. They hurriedly looked in the direction of Martial Universe's players, wanting to see which god had offended so many people. When everyone saw Wang Yu standing not far from the resurrection point, their sympathetic gazes instantly shifted to Martial Universe's players. F***CK. Which guild is he from? Don't you know the rules? Are you tired of living? I don't know, but I'm sure he's a young man. Any veteran player who knew Yu Huiqing would know what taboo Yu Huiqing was most afraid of. Those who dared to go against Wang Yu were either newbies who had just reached level 10 or hotheads who were in their rebellious phase. Adults definitely wouldn't do such a thing. That can't be. Judging from their equipment and levels, they're clearly not low-level players. Could they be from another city? Someone who was more quick-witted cut to the chase. Other major cities? When the crowd heard this, they quickly glanced at the chests of Invincible Supremacy's group. As expected, it was an unfamiliar badge. F***CK. A cross-city pursuit? Seeing that the other party was indeed someone from another main city, Yu Huiqing and the others immediately became excited. They all sent messages in their moments in the guild channel. Not good. Someone is chasing us across the city. F***CK. Who is so arrogant? Where is he? Let's go and help him. When the Yu Huiqing players saw the message, their fighting spirits surged. As the only major city that had experienced a city war since the launch of Rebirth, the players of Yu Huicheng could be considered experienced. Although the players of Yu Huicheng usually had a good atmosphere, they were actually holding back their anger. After all, how could a game be considered a game if one could not PK? If one PK in their own city, they would be afraid of kicking an iron plate. The players of other cities would not encounter a second Chuanjin, right? I don't know who it is. He's currently in the central street, but we don't need help for now. The spectators began to comfort their friends. Huh, who's so strong? We don't need help. Iron Ox. Fine, pretend I didn't say anything. It was true that Wang Yu was Yu Huicheng's military strength. However, because he was in cahoots with the scum of Chuanjin, his reputation was not very good. Some people said that Wang Yu was honest and kind, while others said that Wang Yu killed people like flies. In short, in the eyes of the players of Yu Huicheng, Wang Yu was a person who was neither good nor evil. To move unhindered tens of thousands of players to attack the city, they were all beaten back by Wang Yu alone. Why would he need help for a mere 100 players? What a joke. If this killing god got excited, he might even kill his own people. That would be awkward. In the blink of an eye, Wang Yu is already surrounded by 3 layers of Martial Supremacy's players. Martial Supremacy's players were strong and well-equipped. As members of a major guild, their teamwork was even better. After surrounding Wang Yu, the melee players quickly closed the encirclement, while the ranged players attacked Wang Yu in 3 waves. In an instant, arrows mixed with magic flew toward Wang Yu. At the same time, Martial Supremacy stood at the back of the team and shouted, "Don't let him get away. He's got equipment." Facing such a strong enemy, Wang Yu's eyes narrowed. He extended the weapon in his hand and transformed it into a long rod. Wang Yu threw away the long rod and leaped forward, knocking down the arrows one by one. At the same time, the magic followed closely behind. The magic that filled the sky did not stop Wang Yu's advance. Wang Yu used Blink to dodge the attacks, rolled on the ground, and rolled into the front row of Martial Supremacy's team. The shield bearers in the front row were tall and sturdy, and with their giant shields in hand, they completely blocked the ranged players' vision. Without vision, the ranged players lost their target, and their attacks were forced to stop. The warriors of Martial Supremacy swarmed forward. A Grandmaster of Combat's most effective skill against a warrior with thick skin and thick flesh was the grab skill. However, when it was a one-on-one fight against a group, the grab skill would be stretched thin. Looking at the warriors that surrounded them, Wang Yu smiled slightly and collided with the chubby warrior that was at the front. The chubby warrior was secretly delighted when he saw Wang Yu's suicidal behavior. He raised his greatsword and slashed at Wang Yu. Wang Yu's weapon shook and transformed into a longsword. Immediately after, Wang Yu thrust his short sword forward and blocked the chubby warrior's greatsword. Finally, the chubby warrior slashed at another warrior behind Wang Yu. Ouch! Due to Wang Yu's interference, the chubby warrior's attack was not protected by the team. The chubby warrior, cried out in pain, and a number floated above his head. At this moment, the situation was chaotic. No one cared about 2 people. Everyone only had a single target in their hands, and that was Wang Yu. However, the students who had fought in a group battle knew that there were at most 10 people standing around a person when they surrounded him. The warriors with the sole respect for martial arts carried their giant swords, and only 7 or 8 people were able to attack Wang Yu in a circle. Wang Yu's 2 swords, one long and one short, attacked from crafty and sinister angles. Like an endless sea, Wang Yu's attacks were as smooth as flowing water. What made Martial Supremacy and the others feel even more helpless was that whether it was Wang Yu blocking or attacking, he would always stick close to a certain player. With such a close distance and Wang Yu's sinister actions, no one dared to use their skills. The ranged classes could not help even if they wanted to. They could only attack one after another. Chapter 853. The Supremacy players had played the game for half their lives, but none of them had ever seen such a troublesome opponent. Wang Yu weaved through the crowd like a swimming fish. Wherever he went, not a single leaf touched his body. He He moved like the wind from the heavens and moved like thunder. His reflexes were quick, his movements smooth, and his attacks precise. He was the first person that the Supremacy players had seen in their lives. Seeing Wang Yu's bravery, the Supremacy players surrounding Wang Yu, as well as the spectators, were dumbfounded. Compared to Wang Yu's fighting style, which utilized the human body's potential and movement to the limit, these people deeply suspected that their previous fighting style was like 3-year-old children beating each other with wooden sticks. As expected of the legendary god, I, Long Outyin, am convinced the Yu Huicheng players were moved to tears. As a legendary Yu Huicheng player, Wang Yu's feats had always been circulated in jokes and stories. After a long time, people could not help but doubt the authenticity of the story. However, now that they were able to witness Wang Yu fighting against 100 people without being at a disadvantage, they felt as if they were witnessing the protagonist of a novel with their own eyes. Their excitement was at its peak. F***CK. Is this guy even human? Different from the excitement of the Yu Huicheng players, the Supremacy players only had one thought in their mind. Although there were only 7 or 8 people surrounding Wang Yu's fighting style was roaming. The 7 or 8 people were the ones who had the most contact with Wang Yu. The people on the periphery also played a significant role. Wang Yu was able to maneuver around with ease despite being surrounded by nearly 100 people, which made people doubt their own lives. This was especially true for the few players around Wang Yu who were at critical HP. They were even more shocked by Wang Yu. When the system notified them that they were at critical HP, they finally reacted and turned around to run away. How could Wang Yu let them go so easily? Wang Yu leaped into the air and activated the Grandmaster of Combat's signature crowd control move, Flaming Tornado Kick. The raging wind and flames engulfed all the enemies around Wang Yu. At the same time, a circle of white light rose around Wang Yu. It was just like the second special effect of the Flaming Tornado Kick, brilliant and dazzling. Of course, although the strength of the martial Supremacy players was far from being as strong as Wang Yu, they were still experts who had experienced hundreds of battles. They would not blindly maintain the status quo. There was a warrior called Fate in the Sky who was very smart. He quickly discovered where Wang Yu's weakness was. Fate in the Sky shouted cleverly, "Everyone, don't attack one by one. Let's attack together and see which one he blocks." As the saying goes, 2 fists are no match for 4 hands. No matter how powerful Wang Yu was, he was not 8 arms Neza. The reason why he could substitute all the attacks was because everyone's attack frequency was not uniform, and Wang Yu could always find a flaw. If everyone attacked together, they would be invincible. There were many experts in ancient Huaxia. In terms of combat, martial arts practitioners were much stronger than many soldiers who did not even know what Kung Fu was. However, how could the ancient army suppress martial arts masters? It was because the soldiers of the army were well-versed in the art of teamwork. No matter how skilled the opponent was, a row of spears would ensure that the opponent would not be able to dodge. The martial Supremacy players have been playing the game for so many years, so they naturally understood Fate in the Sky's words. They exchanged glances, and the players quickly changed from circular encirclement to a square formation. The number of players attacking Wang Yu also increased from 8 to 12, and the defense around them became stronger. Then, Fate in the Sky shouted 1, 2, 3-inch 3 times in the channel. The players in the circle swung their swords and stabbed at Wang Yu, who was in the middle. If Wang Yu was facing a real soldier, he would probably die here. However, the stupid idea of martial supremacy was just thought of, and it did not have the tacit cooperation of a real soldier. Looking at the long swords stabbing at him from all directions, Wang Yu's figure swayed, and he ignored the attacks and flashed to the side, evading the stab. There was no such thing as an unbeatable strategy. In reality, there was no such thing as a shameless skill like teleportation. However, the martial supremacy players were not easy to deal with. Seeing that Wang Yu evaded the first wave of attacks, they quickly swung their long swords and counted 123 and slashed at Wang Yu with their long swords. Even if Wang Yu's teleportation did not have a cooldown, his MP must be limited. They did not believe that he could dodge every attack. Unexpectedly, Wang Yu leaned back and lay on the ground, evading another wave of attacks. At that time, the martial supremacy players pointed their swords down and stabbed at the ground. Wang Yu flipped over and rolled, almost brushing the edge of the swords as he rolled to the bottom of a row of players' feet. In the end, they were players from big guilds. It was impressive enough that they could force Wang Yu to this extent. Looking at the large hole in the ground not far away, Wang Yu wiped away his cold sweat with lingering fear. He realized that if the martial supremacy players continued to cooperate like this, they would become more and more tacit, and when that time came, they would be even more difficult to deal with. Thinking of this, Wang Yu shouted, "Since you're acting like this, don't blame me for being ruthless." Saying that, Wang Yu, who was lying on the ground, swung his long sword, parrying the arrows shot by the surrounding archers. He aimed his short sword at the 3 players beside him and stabbed upward 3 times, the sword not leaving the crotch of the player next to him. Ouch! The 3 players who were stabbed in the crotch reflexively bent over to cover their crotches. Wang Yu rolled on the ground, the blade of his long sword lightly slashing across the throats of the 3 players. Critical damage floated up, and the 3 of them turned into white light. Although Wang Yu had killed the 3 players with a raise of his hand, Wang Yu was still lying on the ground. His pathetic appearance gave everyone the false impression that he was about to die. The martial supremacy players looked at each other and swarmed forward. Unfortunately, they had never seen real kung fu. Even Wu Shakes the Universe had only heard about the famous Thai Chi 8 trigrams fist technique. Not many people knew about lying ground punch, a fist technique that originated from military combat, even in the era of martial arts. Not many people knew about it, not to mention these blind people. As the saying goes, one is not afraid of comparing the goods, but afraid of not knowing the goods. A circle of people swarmed forward, and Wang Yu rolled forward, rolling out of the encirclement. Seeing that Wang Yu had escaped, the crowd was just about to turn around and attack again when there was a boom, and all kinds of statuses appeared above everyone's head. It was the 5 Thunderfruit. The one that Ming Jian Daoxue obtained from Yellow Crane Tower had been given to Wang Yu. Due to the 5 Thunderfruit status control, the circle of people surrounding Wang Yu were either blind or crazy. It was instantly a mess. When the players at the periphery saw this, they hurriedly regrouped and attacked Wang Yu. Wang Yu continued rolling on the ground as he surrounded the inner circle. At the same time, he stabbed out with his 2 arms, one long and one short, at the lower bodies of the players at the 2 sides. The players at the periphery were facing Wang Yu. When faced with Wang Yu's moving around the pillars, they took into account that the pillars Wang Yu was circling around were their companions. The players at the periphery were timid when they attacked. Wang Yu's moves were extremely accurate, and the players at the periphery were stabbed in the lower bodies. Then, they lowered their heads to reveal their vitals, and Wang Yu slit their throats. Chapter 854. The biggest advantage of having multiple layers of encirclement was that they could fill in the gaps when their teammates died. Wang Yu's Circle the Pillar was able to kill almost 10 people with a single Circle the Pillar. Only Martial Valor's players continued to advance, and after a few rounds, only the outermost layer of melee players remained. The players in the inner circle were luckier. With their backs to Wang Yu, they couldn't see their companion's miserable state. They could only listen to their screams, which felt weird. Moreover, even if they were stabbed in the sphincter by Wang Yu's short sword, they wouldn't have to lower their heads and expose their necks. In the game, the buttocks weren't considered a vital point. Wang Yu had almost killed all the melee players in the outer circle, but the players in the inner circle were still holding their buttocks and waiting for an opportunity. At the same time, Martial Universe also realized that he couldn't keep fighting like this. If he kept fighting like this, he would be completely led by the nose by Wang Yu. Sooner or later, they would all be killed by Wang Yu alone. More than 100 people were killed by a single person. This kind of one-sided battle result wasn't just a 10% loss of experience. Anyone who cared about their reputation wouldn't let this happen. If they were killed by their own people, They might be able to defend themselves, but if they were killed by Wang Yu alone, they would be tarnished for the rest of their lives. Don't worry about the people inside. Blast them. Martial Universe shouted, decisively ordering the ranged players in the outer circle to kill their own people as well. The ranged players couldn't help but watch as their companions were slaughtered. Their faces had long since turned red from holding back. When they heard Martial Universe's shout, their fighting spirit burst forth with 120%. Magic arrows rained down on the encirclement as if they were free. Under the disdain of Yu Huiqing's players, Wang Yu and Invincible's melee players were engulfed by endless magic. The magic arrows fell for nearly 10 seconds. It wasn't until they could no longer see a single figure in the light of the magic that Martial Universe ordered them to stop. He's dead this time, right? Looking at the empty encirclement, Wu Dongqian Kun still had some lingering fear in his heart. The archers and mages of Wu Dongqian Kun, on the other hand, targeted the Grandmaster of Combat's resurrection point. They planned to send Wang Yu back the moment he exited the resurrection point. However, at this moment, a familiar nightmarish voice rang out behind Wu Dongqian Kun. So you're hiding at the back. I've been looking for you for so long. You're not dead. Turning his head, Wudong Qianquan saw Wang Yu standing behind him like an iron tower. Seeing that Wang Yu wasn't dead, Wudong Qianquan's soul almost left his body. Turning around, he tried to retreat. Wang Yu already knew that Wudong Qianquan was going to use this move. Before Wudong Qianquan could escape, Wang Yu pulled Wudong Qianquan back with his left hand with Tiger Strike. Then he grabbed Wudong Qianquan's neck by the throat and pressed a chi wave the size of a wash basin into Wudong Qianquan's face. Wudong Qianquan was instantly reduced to a puff of white light. A country bumpkin who hasn't even seen blink before. Wang Yu spat disdainfully in the direction that Wudong Qianquan had disappeared to. At the same time, hearing the commotion behind them, Invincible and the other ranged players who were aiming at the Grandmaster of Combat's resurrection point also turned around. Hi, how are you? Goodbye. Wang Yu waved at the crowd and turned to run. However, as soon as he turned around, he saw that the melee players he had killed had already resurrected and returned to the streets. Wang Yu turned around and tried to go the other way. The group of players who had surrounded Wang Yu from the alley had also arrived at the battlefield. Once again, Wang Yu was surrounded so tightly that not even a drop of water could escape. This time, the number of enemies was several times greater than before. Looking at the countless enemies around him, Wang Yu silently pulled out a red scarf and hung it around his neck. Mother Asterisker, you're still not dead this time? Wudong Qianquan once again appeared from the resurrection point. You can count yourself lucky if you can beat 100 people by yourself. There are almost 800 people here now. If you can still beat them all, I'll quit the game right now. While thinking this, Wudong Qianquan proudly commanded his players, slaughter. Before Wudong Qianquan could finish his pretentious words, he suddenly heard a loud shout, flash shadow chain kick. Immediately after, to place one's pride, jumped out from the resurrection point. Flash shadow chain kick was to place one's pride's ultimate skill. It was also known as the end of generations kick. At this stage of the game, this kick could instantly kill anyone. Before Wudong Qianquan could even see to place one's pride's face clearly, to place one's pride's big foot landed on the bridge of his nose. The poor Wudong Qianquan was once again sacrificed in his days. A pair of pants fell to the ground. He dropped an equipment. Look at my luck. At this moment, to place one's pride, who had killed Wudong Qianquan, reached over and picked up Wudong Qianquan's pants. Not only did this brat pick up the equipment to look at its attributes, he even put it in front of his nose to smell it. To place one's pride's actions made Wang Yu feel disgusted. This was Wudong Qianquan's pants. To place one's pride did not care about that. Seeing that the attributes of the pants were better than his, and that there was no smell, he immediately put them on. Damn, I forgot that he had a helper. Wang Yu's bravery had caused the players of To Place One's Pride to think that he was their only enemy. To Place One's Pride's sudden appearance immediately made them realize that their opponent was not fighting alone. It was obviously too late for them to react now. To place one's pride had killed Wudong Qinquan. In Lauer had already activated collision and charged into the crowd at the Resurrection Point's entrance. Almost at the same time, Bao San's whirlwind slash and Mingdu's magic whistled through the air. Most of the ranged classes like to place one's pride were killed in this wave of attacks. Just as these people thought that they were lucky enough to escape this calamity, Mingjian Daoshua and Bai Mingyu flashed their blades behind them. Coordinating with Yang Na and Linglong Dream's arrows, they carved out a path of blood. When the other players of To Place One's Pride saw this, they immediately charged forward and launched a counterattack against Quan Jin's group. Hurry to the Resurrection Point. At the Resurrection Point, Wu Ji saw that the other party had begun their counterattack and roared at Wang Yu's group. When the Chuanjin players heard Wu Ji's reminder, they did not linger and scrambled into the Resurrection Point for the Grandmaster of Combat. Seeing that Wang Yu's group had escaped into the safe zone, the players of To Place One's Pride, who had suffered a loss, had nowhere to vent their anger and started cursing. Yu Huiqing's players all expressed that they had never seen such a dirty street in all their years of playing the game. After being cursed by so many people, Quan Jun's group, who had a different way of thinking compared to normal people, did not get angry at all. Instead, they looked smug as if they were asking for a scolding. This made Wang Yu extremely surprised. Mingdu even showed off to To Place One's Pride. See that? There are more people cursing me than you. Wang Yu was dumbfounded. He really did not know what was there to be proud of. You're comparing yourself to Uncle Nyo. To Place One's Pride also had a childish temper. Sigh, it's my loss. After listening attentively for a while, Mingdu bowed to Wang Yu. Chapter 855. After a moment of confusion, Wang Yu turned around and asked Wu Ji, "Weren't you guys at the Resurrection Point? Why did you guys appear here?" Wu Ji pursed his lips and said unhappily, "There's no one at the entrance of the Resurrection Point. All of us added up aren't as important as you, God Ox." Yu Huiqing's 7 resurrection points were on the same street. The moment Wang Yu appeared, the players from the 7 resurrection points all ran out to capture Wang Yu. The Chuanjin members at the resurrection points were ignored. While Wang Yu was busy fighting with them, the few of them sneaked out from the crowd. Everyone had indeed escaped safely, but the feeling of being looked down upon was indeed a little heart-wrenching. Furthermore, it was the Chuanjin members who would compare themselves to others even when they were scolded. Hee, is that so? I thought you guys weren't going to help me and was prepared to escape. It's all thanks to you guys, hee. Wang Yu chuckled. Wang Yu wasn't an insensible person. Although Wang Yu had said that he didn't need the help of others, if it weren't for the appearance of the Chuanjin members at the critical moment, Wang Yu would have been in a much more pathetic state even if he could have escaped unscathed. Wang Yu couldn't do something like blaming his teammates because of his own words in a moment of anger. TSK. Only you guys practice martial arts with dignity. We have dignity too. If Wang Yu hadn't mentioned it, everyone might have forgotten about it. Now that Wang Yu mentioned it, everyone looked down on Wang Yu. What the heck was he saying? Everyone was killed. How could he not take revenge? I didn't mean it that way. Wang Yu hurriedly laughed it off and apologized. Trash. Everyone gave Wang Yu the middle finger in unison. Wang Yu ignored everyone's disdain and asked Wu Ji seriously, "What do we get out like this?" Right now, outside the Grandmaster of Combat's resurrection point, only martial supremacy's people were already packed. Rather than saying that the Quanjin sect's people had fought their way out of the encirclement, it was more accurate to say that they had been forced into a dead end. Of the 7 main classes resurrection points, only the Priest and Grandmaster of Combat resurrection points had roofs. Even Chuanjin's players who knew how to run on roofs had to get out of the resurrection point first. Hundreds of archers outside the resurrection point were aiming at the door of the Grandmaster of Combat dojo. If Chuanjin's people dare to walk on roofs in front of them, they would dare to shoot Chuanjin into a porcupine. Therefore, the situation wasn't optimistic. Chuanjin's people were completely blocked at the resurrection point. They had to have the ability to fight their way out if they wanted to. However, in order to hunt down Chuanjin's people, Invincible had brought more than 1,000 people, and every single one of them was an elite player. Putting aside the fact that Chuanjin's people could not withstand more than a few waves of attacks, even if Chuanjin's people had the ability to devour 1,000 people with just 10 of them, the resurrection point was nearby. If that was the case, Invincible's players would definitely have an endless supply. No matter how powerful Chuanjin's people were, they could not be unreasonable. Wuji thought for a moment and said, "They have enough troops now and aren't afraid of exhaustion. If we want to break out, we need stronger people to help us." "Oh, should we?" After hearing Wuji's words, everyone looked at Wang Yu. Wuji's words were not without reason. If they wanted to truly escape, they needed an organization strong enough to block Invincible's 1,000 people at the resurrection point to deal with Invincible. To move unhindered among all the major guilds in Rebirth. Only evildoers run wild had the ability and courage to do so. "We don't need to trouble others with our own matters." Wuji shook his head and said, "Let's wait a little longer. Reinforcements will be here soon." Ha ha ha. As soon as Wuji finished speaking, an arrogant laughter came from the side. "You think you can get out? Let me tell you, if you don't hand over your equipment, don't ever leave this resurrection point again." Everyone looked toward the source of the voice and saw a burly man standing there with his hands on his hips, wearing only his underwear. The hairs on his snow-white thighs swayed in the wind, and his face was filled with malevolence. Who else could it be but Invincible Universe? Invincible Universe's laughter was very arrogant, and his attitude was very unyielding. However, Invincible Universe's current image was like that of a crazy man on a bus. Such arrogant words coming out of his mouth were mostly a joke. There were players who had just logged in at the resurrection point who did not know who Invincible Universe was. When they saw his behavior, they could not help but look at him strangely. Wang Yu and the others were all adults, so they naturally would not lower themselves to the level of a naked man. To place one's pride, on the other hand, was better at infuriating people. He pointed at Invincible Universe and shouted, "F***CK, running naked in broad daylight? Who gave you the courage to do that?" To place one's pride, even pointed at his pants. Invincible Universe did not know that his pants were gone. When he heard to place one's pride shout, he immediately lowered his head. At that moment, he saw his bare thighs and immediately blushed in embarrassment. Following to place one's pride's finger, Invincible Universe saw his own equipment on to place one's pride's body. His expression turned even uglier, and he angrily pointed at the Chuanjin members and shouted, "You bunch of bastards! Even if you return your equipment, I won't let you off so easily." "Oh, with just these few people?" Wuji raised his eyebrows and asked in disdain. "Oomph." Invincible Universe snorted coldly. "There aren't many of us, but it's more than enough to stop you. Is that so? Look outside." Wuji chuckled and pointed outside the door. Invincible Universe stretched his head out and looked outside. He saw that the street outside the resurrection point was packed with people. It was a black mass, and he did not know how many people there were. These are your people?" Seeing the crowd on the street, Invincible Universe's eyeballs almost popped out of their sockets. In his information, there were less than 20 people in Chuanjin. How do they suddenly have so many helpers? Wuji laughed and said, "They're from our city." Of course, the people on the street were not from Chuanjin. They were players from various guilds in Yuhuicheng. It was not only Yuhuicheng. Any player in a main city would have a special collective sense of honor. Since the system had assigned these people to the same main city, it was fate. Everyone would have conflicts and fight each other, but that was ultimately a family matter. In the face of the main city's honor, everyone was bound together. Once an enemy came to invade, everyone would definitely unite against them. Currently, there were tens of thousands of Yuhuicheng players on the street. Although Blood Red War Flag did not show up because of Invincible Universe, Wang Yu saw Blood Red War Flag greeting him. This touched Wang Yu's heart. Seeing the tens of thousands of players on the street, Invincible Universe's players broke out in a cold sweat. One by one, they rushed into the resurrection point. It cannot be helped. In the face of absolute numbers, Any strategy or skill was useless. With so many people, one skill per person was enough to wipe out everything. How is it? Do you still think you're so great? Wuji asked Invincible Universe coldly. Chapter 856. Faced with Wuji's mockery, Universe Domination's expression darkened. He didn't know how to respond. As the boss of a major guild, Martial Universe was naturally aware of what was going on outside. When Universe Domination first brought his people to Yu Huicheng, he was already on guard and tried his best to avoid alarming Yu Huicheng's players. However, Wang Yu's bravery still alerted Yu Huicheng's players in the end. Only Martial Supremacy was a large guild with tens of thousands of players. If he mobilized everyone in the guild, they might be able to defeat a mob of tens of thousands. However, if he did so, he would thoroughly anger Yu Huicheng's players. At that time, it wouldn't be as simple as tens of thousands of players. One had to know that Yu Huicheng had close to 200,000 players. Even if half of them came, it would be enough to annihilate only Martial Supremacy several times over. Some people wanted to ask, wouldn't Universe Domination call for Ares City's players to help? What a joke. Players weren't united against outsiders because of a certain guild, but because they wanted to protect their city and their own dignity. It was an honorable act. Once they left their own city and attacked another city, the nature of the players would change. They would become invaders. Invaders didn't have any damn dignity. Players were all smart. If there were no benefits, no one would help only Martial Supremacy. Mobilizing hundreds of thousands of players, even if it cost 10 gold per person, the military expenditure would be enough for Universe Domination to buy hundreds of sets of dark gold-grade equipment. At the end of the day, Wu Dongqian was a reputable figure. Even if he was defeated, he couldn't embarrass himself in front of so many of his underlings. So what if they have more people? Do you think they could protect you every day? Universe Domination said. Well said. Wuji clapped his hands and praised Wu Dongqian. He then pointed at Wang Yu and said to Wu Dongqian, I believe you've seen this master's abilities. Do you believe that he can kill you whenever he wants? When Wudong Universe saw Wang Yu staring at him with a face full of killing intent, he could not help but tremble. Towards Wang Yu, Wu Dongqian was truly afraid. Wu Dongqian had personally experienced the battle just now. Wang Yu had easily killed him despite being surrounded by more than 100 people. Wuji's words were not exaggerated. Moreover, from Wang Yu's expression, he should be very interested in hunting down Wu Dongqian. Being targeted by such a ruthless person, let alone Universe Martial, anyone would feel uneasy. Even if Universe Martial was the guild leader of a major guild, he couldn't possibly be protected by hundreds of players every day. Then what do you want? Wudong Universe asked Wuji with lingering fear in his heart. Very simple. Wuji narrowed his eyes and said with a smile, Everyone knows that our Chuanjin is the most reasonable. As long as you admit defeat, we will definitely not make things difficult for you. What the F***CK? Talk reason? Isn't this son of AB**TCH afraid of divine retribution for saying such words? Hearing Wuji's words, Universe Domination and his subordinates looked at Wuji in shock. They found it hard to believe that a person who could snatch someone's equipment could be reasonable. Universe Domination sneered. Just admit defeat? So simple? Universe Domination was a wily old fox. He had fought his way to the top in Battle God City. There was no way he wouldn't know what would happen after the battle. Wuji smiled and said, Of course not. I only said that I won't make things difficult for you. I didn't say that I'll just let it go. Wuji was very shrewd. He led Universe Domination into a trap step by step. When Universe Domination said that, it was obvious that he didn't want to fight anymore. Since his opponent was afraid, Wuji's next step was naturally to negotiate terms. I knew it. Wudong Universe glanced sideways at Wuji, his eyes filled with disdain. As the guild leader of a big guild, he still had this bit of aura. Moreover, Wudong Universe was afraid of Wang Yu, not Wuji. Universe Domination's disdain had no effect on a shameless person like Wuji. Wuji ignored it and said, since you guys don't want to buy those equipment, we won't sell them. I won't hold it against you guys for cheating our feelings. How about it? I'm reasonable, right? Universe Domination was still looking at him coldly. But you killed all of us. You have to give us an explanation. Otherwise, my brothers won't be happy. Wuji pointed at Mingdu and the others. Mingdu nodded furiously. Not bad, not bad. Just give me 10,000 gold for each kill. I'm a person who's content. Wow, you're really worthless. I'm so young, at least 50,000 gold. To place one's pride, he expressed that he was not the same type of person as Mingdu, who was only worth 10,000. Chun Xiang and the others also joined in the fun. I'm mature and steady, I'll get 100,000. I'm young and pretty, I'll get 200,000. Hey, old witch, you're shameless. Die. In just a short while, these people's lives shot up to 1 million gold per kill. Seeing these people getting more and more ridiculous, Universe Domination's face darkened. In the end, he couldn't help but say, "Can you guys be more serious? I'm asking you guys with a serious attitude. 1 million is indeed too much. Stop messing around." Wuji turned his head and reprimanded the Chuanjin people. Then, he turned back to Wu Dong Qianquan and said, 10,000 for one time. I think it's quite reasonable. There are 9 of us, including the psychological damage. You'll have to pay 100,000 gold. F*CK. Why don't you guys go rob someone? Seeing that Wuji finally set the price at 100,000 gold, Universe Domination was immediately enraged. Damn it, a piece of dark gold equipment was only worth 10,000 gold. What right did these scum have to ask for 10,000 gold for each death? Wuji said, "Universe boss, you're saying that again. We, Chuanjin, are reasonable people. Why would we do something like that? Besides, robbing someone might not be as fast as this." Shameless. Universe Domination was trembling with anger. He pointed at Wuji and said, "I'm going to fight you today. Kill me at the revival point if you can." As he said that, Universe Domination pointed at Wang Yu and looked at Wang Yu provocatively. It was obvious that Universe Domination was also a troublemaker. Did he really think that Wang Yu couldn't do anything to him in the safe zone? Looking at the fearless Universe Domination, Wang Yu walked out of the revival point without saying a word. He looked around, then greeted the 2 guards not far away from the revival point. "Lord Warrior, what are your orders?" The 2 guards walked to Wang Yu's side and asked with a salute. Wang Yu pointed at Wu Dong Universe and said, "Get him out for me. We're at your service." The 2 guards Quacha saluted Wang Yu before striding to Wu Dong Qianquan's side. Each of them grabbed one of Wu Dong Qianquan's arms, and under the watchful eyes of the crowd, they carried Wu Dong Qianquan out of the revival point. Seeing this scene, everyone present was dumbfounded. The people from martial supremacy were shocked. Just who was Wang Yu to be able to command the main city guards? The players from Afterglow City were astonished. Who the hell was this? In broad daylight, he wasn't even wearing pants. Chapter 857. What is this? Wu Dong Qianquan, who was being held by the guards, was dumbfounded when he saw the tens of thousands of players staring at his lower body. No matter how hard he thought, he would never have imagined that he would be dragged out of the resurrection point, much less in such a state. Wu Dong Qianquan was also an influential figure of his generation. Everyone in the Battle God City knew about him. Right now, under the watchful eyes of so many people, he wasn't even wearing a pair of pants, making it seem like he was caught red-handed. One could imagine how awkward the situation was. Right now, Wu Dong Qianquan wanted nothing more than to die. But now, he was being held by 2 guards. It would be hard for him to die, even if he wanted it. The most painful thing in life wasn't death, but not being able to die, even if you wanted to. The players from Wu Dong Qianquan couldn't bear to watch. They held back their laughter and hid in the resurrection point, afraid that they would be recognized as Wu Dong Qianquan's underlings. Just as Wu Dong Qianquan was about to die, Wuji caught up with him and whispered into Wu Dong Qianquan's ear, "Relax, they don't know you." "Is that so?" Wu Dong Qianquan's heart shook. He raised his head and noticed the confusion on everyone's faces. He was glad that they didn't know him. It was fine as long as they didn't know him. There were so many players in the game, and there were countless people with similar figures. But Wuji's next sentence made Wu Dongqian spit out a mouthful of blood. Wuji said sinisterly, "They don't know who you are, but I can tell them. Bastard, you will die a horrible death." Wu Dongqian glared at Wuji angrily, his eyes spitting fire. He wanted nothing more than to slap Wuji to death. Unfortunately, Wu Dongqian couldn't even kill himself, let alone others. He could only struggle to show how strong the guards were. Wuji saw that Wu Dongqian was still so arrogant, so he turned to Wang Yu and asked, "Old cow, didn't you say you wanted to settle it yourself? What will you do in this situation?" Wang Yu thought for a moment, then pointed to the roof of the church. "How about I strip him naked and hang him on the roof? It's so high up there. Everyone will be able to see him." F***CK. When Wu Dongqian heard Wang Yu's words, tears flowed out. Wuji was ruthless, but Wang Yu was not only ruthless, he was also ruthless. What kind of people were they? Not bad. Wuji rubbed his chin and said, "When the time comes, it will be considered as a tourism industry in Yu Huicheng that will greatly promote the economic development. The few of us will be responsible for explaining the scenery here, and I reckon that we will be able to earn quite a lot of tour guide fees." As he spoke, Wuji winked at Wang Yu. As expected of Wuji, if they had done this earlier, we would have been rich a long time ago. It's settled then. Let Dao Shui take a video and post it on the main forum. As Wang Yu spoke, he reached out to take the universe of martial arts from the guard and was about to climb onto the roof. Hearing the two of them echoing each other, Wu Dongqian's face turned pale with fright. No matter what, Wu Dongqian was an overlord. He came all the way here to cause trouble, but in the end, he was hung naked in public. If word of this got out, how was he supposed to live? Forget about Wu Dongqian himself. If word of this got out, the entire only martial supremacy would probably be implicated. After all, the big guilds care more about fame and reputation. Having a boss who hung someone up in public and a boss who was hung up in public felt different. Only martial supremacy and the others dared not step forward to stop him. Looking at Wang Yu, who was about to get serious with the universe of martial arts, their faces were filled with sympathy for Wu Dongqian. As the saying goes, compared to being laughed at by everyone, the most miserable thing is to have everyone sympathize with you. This time, Wu Dongqian was truly convinced. He cried out in fear and trepidation, I was wrong. Two bosses, what do you want?" Hee. Wuji smiled faintly. "If you know you're wrong, then change for the better. We, Chuanjin, have always been reasonable. Like I said, there's nothing that money can't solve. You just need to pay 80,000 gold. Okay, I'll pay, all right." Wu Dongqian agreed while pointing at the resurrection point. "Can we talk inside?" Wu Dongqian didn't even have his pants on. Being stared at by so many people made him feel a chill in his heart. "Okay." Wang Yu nodded. Wang Yu let go of Wu Dongqian and tossed him to the ground. Wu Dongqian scrambled into the resurrection point. After hiding in the resurrection point, Wu Dongqian calmed himself down and asked, "Boss Wuji, Boss Iron Ox, just give me a quick answer. If you include oh no, your dark gold equipment, how much would it cost?" Seeing that Wu Dongqian was still reluctant to part with the equipment, Wang Yu and Wuji both smiled knowingly. At this time, famous Sword Snow walked over and said, "We have a total of 40 pieces of equipment. According to the price of 10,000 gold per piece, that's a total of 400,000 gold. According to the current exchange rate between gold and RMB, that's a total of 24 million before taxes. Boss Qian, do you want to transfer RMB or gold?" Gold. Wu Dongqian hurriedly said. Right now, there were hundreds of millions of players in the game. The production of gold was an astronomical figure every day, so the exchange rate between gold and RMB was constantly falling. 400,000 gold was not a large amount for Wu Dongqian. If it could be settled with gold, no one would use RMB. One had to know that Wu Dongqian also had a boss behind the scenes. This matter was to clean up Lucifer's mess, so it could not be made public. Gold was a virtual currency, and Wudong Qiankuan would have to report it to the higher-ups if he used RMB. Wouldn't that be exposed? Gold is fine too. Xuanzhen's people were not picky. They were all gamers. Even the current Wang, you did not rely on the game to make money. There was no difference between gold and RMB. All right, with the 100,000 we agreed on at the beginning, it's a total of 500,000. I'll write a contract for you now, Wudong Qiankuan said. This kind of large transaction had exceeded the limit of gold, so a contract was needed. 500,000? No. That's just the equipment and compensation for killing us. We still have other things to discuss. Wu Ji waved his hand. What else? Wudong Qiankuan asked in surprise. Did you know that the reward for winning the qualifier was stolen by the system because of your guild's Lucifer? Wu Ji calmly said to Wudong Qiankuan. There's such a thing? Wudong Qiankuan was not stupid. He knew that Wu Ji was going to ask for an exorbitant price again. However, he was already a fish on the chopping block. He could only grit his teeth and curse Lucifer 100 times of his heart. How could this brat be so good at stirring up trouble? Just how many bad things did he do to deserve this? Chapter 858. The system announced it. All the players in the country can vouch for it. Wu Ji said, that's the champion's reward. There should be at least a few pieces of epic equipment. Epic. Martial Universe's face darkened. This bastard really dared to say such a thing. Most of the major guilds wouldn't even bother to participate in a grassroots competition. Dark gold equipment was already good enough as a reward, let alone epic equipment. Wasn't this bullshit a little too much? Why don't you say it's a godly equipment? Legendary weapon couldn't take it anymore and retorted. Yeah. Wu Ji rubbed his chin and nodded. He then said to legendary weapon, you're right. It's very likely to be a godly equipment. Legendary weapon was completely dumbfounded. Bro, I was just making it up. Can you pretend I didn't say anything? Me too. Wu Ji laughed. F***CK. The divine weapon was infuriated. Let's not discuss the epic equipment's price. After all, I haven't even seen the rewards yet, right? Look at all the brothers that have come to help. We need to give them an explanation as well. In total, you'll have to pay 200,000 gold. What do you think? Wu Ji asked Martial Universe. F***CK. Martial Universe's knuckles cracked. He wanted to throw caution to the wind and embarrass himself. He didn't want to pay. Seeing Wudong Universe's expression, Wu Ji continued in a low voice. It's just 200,000 gold. It's nothing much to your guild. If something happens, the impact on your guild will definitely exceed this price. Wu Ji's blade could be said to have pierced Wudong Qiankuan's heart. The guild's boss being stripped naked in public was a huge insult to the guild. No matter how powerful Absolute was, the guild members wouldn't be able to take it if word of this got out. A large guild's income didn't just come from the competition. It also came from the shares of the financial group behind it. If all the guild members ran away, it would be a huge blow to the boss behind the scenes, especially since the Pro League was about to begin. So what if the only martial artist could win? The fact that boss was humiliated by others was something that could never be erased. It hadn't been easy for Martial Universe to climb to this point. If something really did happen, he wouldn't just lose his job. In any case, coins were the blood and flesh of the guild members. Martial Universe knew which was more important, himself or his subordinates. After being threatened by Wu Ji, Wudong Qiankuan, who was about to explode in anger, lowered his head and asked dejectedly, 200,000 gold. Can I get discount? Wu Ji's price had skyrocketed too quickly. No matter how rich only Martial Sovereign was, he still had to be thrifty with his spending. You'll have to ask my wife, Wu Ji said. Oh, which of these two is sister-in-law? Wudong Universe looked at Yang Na, an exquisite dream, in surprise. Bah, shameless. The two girls spat at Wudong Qiankuan and turned their heads away. When did you get a wife? Wang Yu asked in surprise. I don't have a wife, Wu Ji said. Then tell me. It means there's no room for discussion. Wu Ji spread his hands. Wudong Qiankuan, how about it? Is the price suitable? Wu Ji asked Wudong Qiankuan. Can I say no? No, it's suitable. Wu Dongqian nodded decisively. Wu Dongqian could see that the most despicable person in the Quanjin sect was Wu Ji. No matter how vicious Wang Yu was, he was only killing people. Wu Ji, on the other hand, was risking his life for blood. He was simply unreasonable. With the conditions agreed, Wu Dongqian quickly wrote a contract for 700,000 gold. Since it was a virtual transaction, it was tax-free. After accepting the contract, Wang Yu traded the equipment to Wu Dongqian. Wu Ji walked to the resurrection point and shouted at the crowd, "Brothers, I'm sorry. We were just joking. Everyone, please leave. Thank you for this time. If you need anything from Chuanjin in the future, just say the word." Outside the resurrection point, the tens of thousands of players in Yu Huicheng heard this and didn't complain. They left the central street in an orderly manner. Seeing that all the players outside the resurrection point had left, Wu Dongqian was like a defeated rooster. He walked out of the resurrection point dejectedly and disappeared into the streets with his thousands of subordinates. This time, Wu Dongqian was probably traumatized. He definitely wouldn't dare to come to Yu Huicheng for a period of time. Only Wu Dongqian was called a scoundrel in Aries City. Wu Dongqian was already a little smug. However, after seeing the ruthless demon Chuanjin, he knew that he still had a long way to go. 700,000, almost 70,000 per person. We're rich. F***CK. After Wu Dongqian left, the Chuanjin people immediately surrounded Wang Yu. 700,000 gold. To a large guild with tens of thousands of people, each person wouldn't even get 100 gold coins. However, to a small group of a dozen or so people, it was definitely a huge sum of money. This was the first time Chuanjin had seen so much money after robbing Xiaobing's workshop. What's 700,000? Dream on. There's still people waiting to get their share. Wu Ji glared at the crowd and chased them away. Then, he stood on the spot and seemed to be sending a message. A few seconds later, Wu Ji finished sending the message and said to the Chuanjin people, "Let's go to the tavern." The group left the resurrection point in a grandiose manner and arrived at the tavern. Just as they entered the tavern, Wang Yu heard someone calling out, "God Neo, Boss Wu Ji, over here, over here." Everyone looked over and saw 8 or 9 people sitting at the big table in the middle of the tavern. They were all familiar faces. There was Blood Red War Flag, 2012, and even the boss of Finger Heaven, Captain Don't Shoot. Why are they here? Wang Yu asked in confusion. The other Chuanjin people were also confused. Among these people, only Blood Red War Flag could be considered an old friend. They were not familiar with the others, especially Captain Don't Shoot. They used to be enemies. Hee, Wu Ji said. Do you think that with your reputation, so many people will support you in such a short period of time? Wang Yu was slightly stunned. Could it be their people? Most of them. Wu Ji smiled and walked to the table. He said to the bosses, "Thank you for your information and support this time. This 200,000 is the compensation for Invincible. It's a small token of appreciation. Please accept it." Not all, not at all. We are mutually benefiting each other. Even if we were to use force to cause trouble, we would still be doomed. God Iron Bull is really something. The various guild leaders took the money humbly while looking at Wang Yu with complicated expressions. Hearing the conversation between Wu Ji and these people, the Chuanjin people finally understood. It turned out that this was all part of Wu Ji's plan. Wu Ji had received the news from the beginning. That was why he urged Wang Yu to come and sell his equipment. Then, he brought the Chuanjin people to make a big deal out of this. The people from the big guilds pretended to be Yu Huicheng's players to surround Invincible Universe. Previously, Invincible Universe had already communicated with the big guilds. The reason why he did this was to find an excuse to surround them. No one would dislike money that was delivered to their doorstep. P.S. This old man is familiar with the 3 kingdoms and has some understanding of Zhao Yun's appearance. Zhao Yun has a square face, a double chin, thick eyebrows, and is extremely muscular. He likes to wear white clothes. Chapter 859. However, what Wu Ji didn't expect was that Wang Yu could single-handedly kill over 100 of martial supremacy's players. This was also the reason why the big bosses looked at Wang Yu in horror. What did it mean to fight 100 people alone? Currently, a guild only had 500 people. Wang Yu alone could take on at least a quarter of the guild. If this guy wanted to kill someone, that person might as well just give up the game. Seeing such a ruthless person like Wang Yu, everyone was glad that they didn't become enemies with Chuanjin. Otherwise, they would be in trouble. Wang Yu could still understand Wu Ji's strategy, but there was one thing that he couldn't understand. Why didn't they just come up and surround martial supremacy? Did they have to go around in such a big circle? Wang Yu asked in confusion. Idiot, Wu Ji smiled and said. Then wouldn't everyone be exposed? Martial supremacy's influence is still very strong. Everyone can't stay in Yu Huicheng forever. There's an old saying in our country, make a fortune in silence. Do you understand? I see. Wang Yu understood. Scamming people and not letting them know who scammed them. Such a despicable method was indeed Wu Ji's style. Moreover, everyone was making money together. It was mutually beneficial, and it could also help improve the relationship between the guilds. Killing two birds with one stone, why not? One had to know that apart from the equipment, martial supremacy had lost a total of 300,000. Chuanjin only sent out 10 people and took 1/3 of it. It was definitely the biggest profit. The other guilds sent out a lot of people, but there were no casualties. They just strolled around the streets. To be able to take this amount was no different from picking it up for free. Only Wu Ji could make everyone happy in business. As for how the other guilds divided the 200,000, it was none of Chuanjin's business. After throwing the money to everyone, Wu Ji was about to get up and leave with everyone. Suddenly, the captain stopped firing and stood up. Boss Wu Ji, Guru Iron Ox, don't be in a hurry to leave. The captain said. Oh, what's wrong? Wu Ji turned his head and asked the captain not to shoot. Chuanjin and Finger at the Sky had a small conflict a while ago. To be honest, Wu Ji did not have a good impression of Captain Don't Shoot. If Captain Don't Shoot was not in a hurry to join the operation, Wu Ji would not have called him over. Well, you don't have to take my share of the money, the captain said without shooting. Oh, as expected of a tycoon. How heroic. Wu Ji gave him a thumbs up and praised indifferently. There were a total of 8 guilds participating in this operation. The 200,000 gold coins would be divided into 8 portions, and each guild would receive a considerable amount of money. The party leader didn't just say no. This kind of heroism wasn't something an ordinary person could display. But I have a request. The captain didn't shoot. Okay, go ahead. Wu Ji knew it wouldn't be that simple. Captain Don't Shoot was smart. Money was indeed nothing to him. To be able to request for Chuanjin, this matter was much more difficult than earning money. Seeing Wu Ji agree so readily, the team leader, Don't Shoot, said happily, can the Chuanjin sect do us a favor? Murder, arson, or swindle? Wang Yu came over and asked. None of those. The captain shook his head. Then why are you looking for us? Wang Yu's expression was puzzled. The captain didn't shoot. Don't listen to his nonsense. Wu Ji hurriedly said. What do you want? Dungeon. The captain said without shooting. Dungeon? Wu Ji was puzzled. You have your own professional team. Why do you still need us? Rebirth had been released for a long time. Everyone basically knew how to play the game. It wasn't as difficult as it was at the beginning. For example, some difficult dungeons could be passed as long as the players were strong enough. Sword in the Heavens had a professional team. If Chuanjin didn't have Wang Yu, these professional players would only be stronger than the people of Chuanjin. There was no need for them to spend money to hire outsiders. Could it be that there was a trap? The captain laughed bitterly. The professional league is about to start. It's inconvenient for them. No wonder. Wu Ji suddenly understood. Professional teams rarely participated in guild matters. Even when they leveled up, they would train together. As for the tedious matters, such as killing bosses and getting equipment, other than necessary practice, the professional players usually wouldn't do anything. After all, they were professional experts hired with a high salary. Their annual salary was tens of millions. They didn't have the time to fight for resources with a group of low-end players. On the contrary, The purpose of a large guild's existence was to do their best to arm a group of experts. If these professional experts had to handle every single matter personally, then what was the point of spending so much money on nurturing thousands of useless trash? Especially now that it was a critical period. The professional experts were all working hard. Even if the captain was the boss, there was no reason for him to put down his work and come here to work overtime. A professional expert's annual salary was tens of millions. The overtime pay of 10 experts during a critical period was definitely more than 20,000 gold. Who said that the captain was stupid and had a lot of money? He was the smartest among the guild leaders. That captain boss. Wuji thought for a moment and pointed at Wang Yu. If your group of experts doesn't have time, we don't have time either. Look at our old cow. He goes around killing people every day. It's very tiring. The captain thought that Wuji was threatening him, and his expression changed. Wuji laughed disdainfully at Wuji, who was full of lies. Seeing Wang Yu's eerie smile, Captain Don't Shoot, who had personally experienced Wang Yu's terror, was even more terrified. He said with a sobbing tone, "Bosses, if you don't want to help, then don't. Don't scare me." Wuji comforted the captain. "I'm not scaring you. You saw it too. With Old Cow's ability, his appearance fee is definitely not low. Even if 3 to 5 of your professional experts attack together, they wouldn't be a match for Old Cow." That's right, that's right. Captain Don't Shoot nodded his head repeatedly. Captain Don't Shoot could tell that although Wuji wasn't the strongest person in the Quanjin sect, he was definitely the most ruthless person in the sect. It seemed that trying to fool Wuji like how he fooled others wouldn't work. "You have to give me a suitable price for this appearance fee. Forget about the rest of us. We're used to being looked down upon, but you can't look down on our Old Cow. He's someone who would even kill his own people when he goes crazy," Wuji said with a smile. Wang Yu's face was full of black lines as he said to Wuji, "That's enough. If you talk nonsense again, I'll kill you." You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.